وينشر الهدي إيمانا وموعظة فبالجهالة قد خابت مساعينا غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا غابت مناقبنا واسود حاضرنا وأوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Nurul Islam Hall. Those who have a bit more grey hair than black hair will know about the history of this hall and the many deliberations and the many discussions that took place in this hall as part of the fight for freedom and the quest for the liberation of this country. We welcome you this evening on behalf of Radio Islam International and Jamiatul Ulama South Africa. This debate, which we have entitled War of the Words, has been jointly organized and coordinated by Radio Islam International as well as the Jamiatul Ulama South Africa. And we offer our thanks and gratitude to the Nurul Islam Center for offering us the use of this particular facility. This weekend, South Africans will be celebrating 20 years of democracy. 20 years since apartheid came to an end. And as we progress now, the countdown is intensifying towards the 5th democratic elections in South Africa. I'm sure all of us would agree, irrespective of our backgrounds and irrespective of our political affiliations, that a lot has been achieved and there's a hell of a lot more that we need to achieve. And that's why in many ways, this election is a watershed one. And this election, the decision that South Africans make, perhaps could have an impact positively or negatively in the immediate future and also some decade or two later. Therefore, convening such a debate, if you like, such a discussion, if you like, the purpose behind it is not merely entertainment, to see a war of words or to see political parties, having a go at each other, but is so that you, the voter, that vote for which people had given their lives so that we can have the freedom to vote, for which there was so much of toil and so much of effort and so much of sacrifice, that you exercise that vote from an informed position. You may not agree with a lot of what is going to be said tonight. You may agree with a lot of what is going to be said. You may be somewhat skeptical. You may be somewhat worried that people or representatives of parties may exaggerate their achievements and may amplify and inflate what they are able to deliver. If I can digress for a moment, this afternoon I was speaking to Ibrahim Rasool, and he's the former Premier of the Western Cape, and I was interviewing him on a different platform, and he said to me, when we spoke something about politics, he said, Maulana, election time you must make a big mark to all the parties because all of them exaggerate. So you have to forgive all of them, about 20% to 30% discount. I said, all of them including the ANC? He said, yeah, all of them including the ANC. Election time is the time of exaggeration. And I say that with no disrespect, a bit tongue-in-cheek to the representatives of the various political parties that have been kind enough to give us their time this evening. But to come back to what I was saying, the point is not just to come here for a purpose of entertainment, but the point here is to understand where the different political parties are coming from, how they explain their situation and how they give responses to pertinent questions and how they react to what you and I may feel are controversial issues. And when you understand where they're coming from, where you understand how they interpret their own history, how they explain and elaborate their own policies, and how they then put to us their own vision for South Africa in the next 5 years and beyond, it puts you in a better position to agree with the party or to disagree with the party or to decide which party is better for you and which party deserves your vote and which party has the capacity and the ability and the policies to deliver for South Africans and to make South Africa a better place for all of us. So I'm not going to take too much of your time. I don't want, I know that when we get into discussions of this nature, and we've got 7 representatives here tonight, then time does go by very quickly. So I want to get stuck into it as soon as possible. Just a few house rules. I understand and I can see and we appreciate that there are supporters of various parties present here tonight. We appreciate your coming, and it adds flavor to the whole occasion. But if we can just humbly request you that let's keep silent throughout the proceedings, and let's not heckle, representatives of parties that we are not affiliated to, and let's not interrupt proceedings in any way. Also, I would appreciate if that when we come to the floor for questions, those who are, apparently supporters of a political party, don't pose a question to your own party. And the reason for that is because we want to challenge ideas here tonight. So pose questions to members of or representatives of other parties, those who are in official party gear, I'm referring to you. By all means do that, but try and abstain from speaking to your own party, because that you have a representative here already on the platform. How we're going to start, before I introduce the representatives of the various parties, we're going to have 3 initial rounds with time limits. And the time limits are very short, and I know it's not enough to do justice to the questions that I'm going to be asking, but we obviously will touch on these issues again as the program progresses, and we do have time constraints. I don't want this program to go till too late in the evening. So we're going to be asking 3 questions to each representative, and they'll have a time limit within which they need to respond. And my colleague Mufti Yusuf Musaji will be keeping time, and as soon as their time is expired, he'll indicate that to them. The first question that will be posed to each representative: what has been the contribution of your party to the 20 years of democracy that we are now celebrating? And each representative will be given 1 minute to answer. The second question will be: what is your party promising South Africans for the next 5 years, and how do you intend to deliver on that promise? Each candidate there will be given 2 minutes, because that's more towards the core. And the third question: we know that the government has been saying that we have a good story to tell. And we want to hear from all representatives here tonight. We know what Ismail will say, but we want to hear what the others are going to say as to whether we really have a good story to tell or not. That will be the third question, and there will be an allocation of 1 minute. After that time round, if you want to call it, the 3 of them, I'll ask a few follow-up questions, and then we'll take questions from the floor, and then it'll flow as the issues come up and as the topics come up. But I want to allocate as much time as I possibly can to questions from the floor. But my appeal to you that please keep it very brief and to the point. We don't want lectures from the floor, because as much as we may think that we have time goes by very quickly in discussions such as these. I just want to introduce the representatives of the different parties. From the minority front, we have Ms. Shameen Thakur Rajbansi. Then representing the EFF tonight, I hope I'm getting the pronunciation correct, Ompile Mowetwe. Then representing the Patriotic Alliance, we have the Secretary General, Kenny Kunene. There's no sushi on the menu tonight, sir. Then African National Congress representative, Mr. Etols Ismail Vadi, MEC of Transport in Gauteng. Then we have the National Chairperson and the Gauteng Provincial Leader of the Al Jamaa Party, Abdul Razak Noorbai. The young man in front of me here, Yusuf Kasim, he comes all the way from the friendly city, Port Elizabeth. He is the National Federal Chair of the Democratic Alliance for Youth. So he's the youth leader. And lastly here, we have a very experienced man, Farouk Kasim, spent a decade and a half in Parliament as a MP of the IFP. He's now with COPE, and he is part of their policy team, and he heads their research team as well. So Farouk Kasim as a representative from COPE. What we'll do is that we'll go in the seating order in terms of posing the questions and asking for a response from each representative. And then, as they say, ladies first. So we'll start from that end of the seating. Ms. Rajbansi, the first question, and you'll have a minute to answer. What has been the contribution of your party to the 20 years of democracy that we are now celebrating?
Your time starts now.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks. The Minority Front has been a tried and tested party for 20 years of this democracy. It was started by our founder and late leader, Mr. Amichan Rajbansi. It was a party that was born out of the noble idea of minority rights or human rights, but also out of the fact that Mr. Rajbansi was part of the House of Delegates, and he did look after Indian interests in that time. Now, being a responsible leader, going into a transitional and a transformational democracy, he wanted to carry the Indian community with him into this new path and this new type of politics. So what he did was that he just built then on what he had already accomplished in the House of Delegates, and he took it to a further level. This party has been tried and tested for 20 years. Even in the last 2 years on his passing, many attempts have been made to destroy us, but a
Time
party
out.
that was started
Time out,
on
please.
noble...
Time out.
Time out. Thank you. We now move on to the representative of the EFF. Same question. What has been the contribution of your party to the 20 years of democracy that we're now celebrating? I understand you're a young party, but your president has a bit of a longer political record than the party.
Thank you very much, and good evening to the viewers and the listeners on the radio. My party is less than a year old, so I can't answer the 20 years. But we have been in the struggle. Those who are clued up with the history of this country will understand that the president of Economic Freedom Fighters and some senior leadership, they have been in the struggle. They have been advocating the economic freedom in our lifetime for a very long time. And that's probably the reason why they were said to have been misbehaving and all sorts of things. They've been fighting for the cause of the economic freedom. So, I mean, the recent development is that we built a house in Nkandla, despite the fact that we are still a party, we are not yet in government, which is history in the making on its own, because we are the only party not being in government, but giving back to the people, like building a proper house. We've got instances where the municipalities under the government of ANC did not, despite the
Time
fact
out.
that the...
Time is up, Mas. Thank you. Patriotic Alliance, Kenny Kunene. Also a young party.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. Yeah, we are also a very young party, but for the last few months, we've obviously been building the party, creating structures, but also doing research on what policies are practical to implement in this country. Because we do not want to sell utopia that does not exist to South Africans. We do not want to raise expectations of our citizens in the interest of getting political votes when we are actually destroying their hopes. So our policies are very practical, well researched, a few examples of them all over the world that have worked. So we are indeed a party that is ready to govern.
Thank you. The ANC doesn't get 2 minutes because of its age. 1 minute.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to everybody. The ANC is in existence for over 102 years. It has been the principal force for liberation, freedom and democracy in this country. It negotiated the transition to a fully democratic state in 1994. It is the architect of our new constitution, one of the best and most forward-looking in the world. It has got 20 years of experience as a government. It has brought far-reaching changes to our society, but most importantly, it has introduced and restored the self-esteem, the human dignity of every South African, men and women, African, Indian, colored and white. And that is the brilliance of our democracy.
Thank you. Abdul Razak Nurbai from Al Jama'ah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening and goeienaand to the listeners out there, Dumelang and Sanbonani. The Al Jama'ah Community Party was established in 2007 with a view that as a faith-based party, we could positively contribute to the transformation process of post-apartheid South Africa for the benefit of all South Africans. We are a party whose roots are embedded in Islam, and we say we are a party by the Muslims for all the people, and that's why we are saying we are a community party and a voice for all communities. We have transformed ourselves from being a political party to a community-based party, and we firmly believe that divine law can never be subservient to human law, and as such our actions, our policies, and our influences should advance justice, equality, freedom with compassion, caring and sharing with divinely inspired values. Thank you.
Jazakallah. We now move on to Yusuf Qasim, representative of the Democratic Alliance.
Assalamu alaikum Malana and assalamu alaikum to everyone. The DA is a party that existed pre-94 as a progressive federal party. It was a party that opposed apartheid. It was a party that, when we talk about the Constitution, many of the items of the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, was first tabled by the Progressive Federal Party and our members pre-94 in our National Assembly. And since 94, we have been the only party that has been protecting our democracy from the complete annihilation by the ruling party itself. We have done so in opposition across the country by exposing the deep-seated corruption and non-delivery by the ruling party, the undermining of the Constitution, as well as to protect at voting stations itself our democracy. In governance, in the Western Cape, we have the best-run province in the country. We have continued to deliver and deliver effectively. In the city of Cape Town, we have the least unequal city within the country. Within Midvaal, closer to home, as the DA-run municipality in Gauteng, we have the highest economic growth and the lowest unemployment rate.
Right. Finally, Mr. Farouk Kasim from COPE.
Assalamu alaikum. To understand COPE, I think one should read Terra Lekota's book, Prison Letters to My Daughter. He wrote this while he was a trialist in the Delmas trial. These letters can be found on our website, and it gives a fantastic history of the struggle. Remember that COPE was born from the womb of the ANC, and we want to carry forward the legacy of Nelson Mandela. We want to ensure that the moral bar is lifted high, and that what Mandela stood for, which was the getting together of the people, is going to be advanced by COPE. So we want to continue with the legacy of Nelson Mandela and what he stood for.
Right, thank you to one and all. We move on now to the second question. Here the time allocation will be 2 minutes per representative. The question is, what is your party promising South Africans for the next 5 years, and how do you intend to deliver on that promise? Ms. Rajbansi.
We have a lot of hard work ahead in the next 2 years. Service delivery is a huge issue in our country. We've got protests on a daily basis. We've got police brutality. But yet, people are protesting because of corruption, which is actually becoming systemic in our government. And especially our civil servants, they are not well trained. We've got affirmative action as a policy which is making it very difficult, where we are not getting people on merit into jobs. Now, for this next 5 years, we have to work in service delivery. So we're looking at another oversight model in Parliament, and not one designed by Parliament. We are looking for a public participation value chain model for every single department to deliver on service delivery, and full public participation, just like NDP 2031's. But for the NHI, which is a good system, and the MF accepts the system of health, for this model, a lot of hard work has to be done. We need to look at where we're going to get NHI funding so that we can get accessible and quality health. In terms of education, a lot has to be done. A lot of rot has set in, and as Indian people especially, our heart really bleeds when it comes to education. Now, we want a system where the quintile rankings are just dissolved, and every child gets a fair amount of money and it's equitable. We want a system where we look at public-private partnerships and faith-based organizations coming into the education sector to actually rescue it. We're looking at Eastern languages, which we need to protect. We're looking at a minorities ministry and a minorities commission for the minority communities, just like we have in India and in Malaysia. And these are the best practice models that we can benchmark ourselves. But we're looking at how we can get...
Thank you. We now move on to the EFF. Umpile.
Okay, thank you very much. The EFF is promising that as we take government on the 8th of May, the first thing we are going to do is to expropriate land without compensation. And we are not apologetic about that. Secondly, we are going to nationalize the mines, the banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy. Thirdly, we are going to create jobs, and we are going to introduce what we call a minimum wage to close the gap between the rich and the poor. The fourth thing is that we are saying we are going to have a massive industrialization in South Africa. We can't be 20 years into democracy. We've got only 1 or 2 provinces that got big cities like Joburg and Cape Town. So we are saying we need to equally develop provinces like Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and other provinces. The fourth thing is that we are saying we need to move now from reconciliation to justice. We can't be sitting in democracy 20 years and we still have a stolen land in the hands of the thieves. We are saying we want back our land. And then the other thing that we are saying is that we want an open and accountable government. Right now we've got a headline story of Nkandla where we don't know, even the president doesn't know himself, whether he used his own money or the government's money. So we are saying we need an accountable government. that is going to be accountable back to the people of South Africa. And we are also saying we need to build state capacity to be able to do things on our own. We can't be sitting in a government that can't even write letters themselves, or they can't even analyze their own department. For you to analyze a department, you must get a consultant to come and do that for you. It's a shame. So we are saying we need to have to capacitate the government so we can do things on our own. We've got a Department of Transport that is supposed to be building tar roads, but it's not doing that. It's getting somebody else to do that. And I want to disagree with my ANC comrade.
Time.
أوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا وأوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Kenny?
We are envisaging, or we are targeting to win the Western Cape, or to share power in the Western Cape, with a view of, number one, getting entrepreneurs from the previously disadvantaged communities. And by previously disadvantaged communities, we mean blacks, coloreds, and Indians. We are talking about BEE. In its model as it is now, it speaks only to black people. It does not generally speak to previously disadvantaged people. And we are saying that BEE has lost its shine. Therefore, we need to adopt the Norwegian model of sharing the wealth of the country amongst all its citizens. We need to implement a people's partnership entity where all the 26% that needs to be owned by a few individuals must be owned by all citizens so that it can be shared amongst them on a monthly basis. We are talking to education. We are saying our education has to be a world-class education. At the moment, the two departments of education do not make it easy for our young people. Our education is not consistent, and therefore it does not deliver the desired results. It does not speak to career choices at the end of university. Hence, you have graduates who are sitting at home without jobs. We are speaking to the question of corruption. In the model of China, when they started economic development, they said anyone found of corruption must be hanged. We are saying hanging people is barbaric in this country. Therefore, anyone found of corruption must be given a minimum sentence of 25 years. That will show our seriousness. You've got big corporates that are basically corrupting public servants, and yet they get fines. When banks do corruption and fraud, they get fines.
Time. ANC, Ismail Wadi.
Well, elections are not about the past, they're about the future. It's about what will happen over the next 5 years and what is the vision of the ANC for the next 5 years. The single most important challenge facing South Africa is not the pothole, but is unemployment. Job creation is a key part of our program. 26% of our people, economically active people, are unemployed. What is the ANC going to do about it? First of all, we will continue with massive investment in our infrastructure, whether it's the building of dams, power stations, roads, those kinds of things, our ICT infrastructure. Two, we will continue with the expanded public works programs. We have tried a tested model already in place. We will create up to 6 million job opportunities over the next 5 years. The land restitution program had come to an end last year. We are going to extend it again for another 5 years because we think land security and food for all is a critical need. There's poverty in our country and we need to begin to address that. Education investment. For the past 20 years, we have spent 20% of government spending on our education system. We're beginning to see the early fruits of that. The system is stabilizing. We see the quality indicators are coming online. Education is a key opportunity for our people. It can transform a person's lifestyle. We have to combat crime and corruption. Corruption in government is a major problem for us. We're saying that in future, all government servants, public servants, will not be allowed to trade with any government department. At the moment, we have funding that is taking place by public servants. We've got to bring that under control. And if there's any politician from the ANC side that is proven in court to have been corrupt or engaged in corrupt activities, that person will be removed from office. I think very importantly is that we can't just have a narrow perspective. We need a better Africa. We need a better world. South Africa has got a wonderful example of peaceful transition. We have played a major role in Sudan in Rwanda, in the Ivory Coast. We are busy in Sri Lanka. We are assisting in Palestine. Those things are important.
Brother Abdul Razak Nurbai.
Al-Jamaa's first priority is to stamp out the rampant and the abuse of money in spheres of government. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure, as it is called. I just want to highlight on one issue. South Africa's public sector wage bill was in excess of 400 billion rands, and it ranks amongst the highest compared with countries at a similar level of economic development. The government has to moderate salaries with luxury fringe benefits. The rise in salaries for government officials must be matched by increase in productivity. Our other core issue is that we will not victimize the poor, the marginalized, and the homeless as the current anti-poor ruling parties are doing. One of the things that we have achieved with one of our members who has single-handedly taken the bread cartel to the Constitutional Court, and a 7-year battle that he fought, and he won that case, and that was Imran Ismail Muqaddam. And today he is globally known, and his documentary known as Crumbs is available for anybody to see. We are also promoting an interest-free state bank, and it's been proven in countries such as Indonesia and in Bangladesh. The Islamic banking system is one of the most resilient Islamic banking systems in the world, and it has bailed out many, many Western banking systems. If you look at since the 2008 financial crisis, if you look at the city of Kuala Lumpur and what they have achieved, and this is one of the few things that Al-Jamaa has done. In fact, a feather in our cap is that the Minister of Finance in his budget speech, at the end of his budget speech, he made an announcement of Islamic sukuk bonds.
Right, Yusuf Qasim.
Jazakallah khair. The Democratic Alliance is the only political party with the capacity and political will to bring change to South Africa. In 2009, and I took note of what Ismail had said, in 2009 Jacob Zuma came and promised, like we are promising today, that there will be 5 million jobs created. Not only has those jobs not been created, there are 1.4 million more people that are unemployed today than there was in 2009. So of course, the progress that has been made has been reversed. The DA will create 6 million jobs, and our policies have been researched and proved that it can do this. It can grow the economy by 8%. We will be able to save 30 billion rand a year by cutting corruption. We'd not just pay lip service to corruption, but we ensure currently as we stand that our public servants don't do business with the state as ANC members do. We will speed up the delivery of housing and basic services. We will introduce a constituency-based electoral system so that we can make our MPs more accountable. We will make communities safer by putting out 250,000 properly trained police officers on the streets. We will make sure that free education for poor students is a reality by introducing 16 billion rand to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and converting it into a bursary. We will, over and above 6 million real jobs, not just EPWP jobs, we will create 7 million EPWP opportunities. We will introduce and create 1 million internships and opportunity voucher scheme to create businesses and give young people an opportunity to create businesses. We'll improve the social grant system and use it also as a means to lift people out of poverty. We will dedicate an extra 10 billion rand to speed up land reform and provide training and support for emerging farmers. We will make South Africa a nation of entrepreneurs by cutting red tape and providing more support and training for small businesses. We will break up the inefficient state monopolies that currently exist and distribute those shares to ordinary South Africans so that it's just not in a political elite that currently exists. We will also invest at least 10% of GDP in critical infrastructure developments. We will improve black economic empowerment so that it benefits all South Africans.
Finally, Farouk from COPE.
Thank you. COPE will make sure that the president is elected directly by the people. Secondly, we will end cadre deployment. Third, we will make sure that the government is reduced in size. Mandela had a cabinet of 42. Zuma has a cabinet of 67. That's where the money is going. Secondly, we will ensure that the huge debt which is now touching 2 trillion rands is going to be reduced. At the moment, 12 rands out of all taxpayers' money goes towards paying for interest. And government has to borrow 18 rands 70 out of every 100 rands it is spending in order to fund itself. This is totally unsustainable. This book here, which I have in front of me, is called the Budget Review 2014. On page 69, government is using long-term debt to pay for short-term debt, meaning it is putting the burden of paying this money back on the shoulders of those who are going to be productively employed. We want to make sure that every child in our schools gets a free computer, as in Uruguay. We want to make sure that people have skills, especially in ICT, in technology, and are able to work as artisans. COPE is insisting that we have to lift the moral bar. The question of shame has disappeared from our politics. People can do whatever they want today, and they're not ashamed. Whoever creates an offense, there are people who will come to that person's defense. That situation can no longer prevail. Within 2 years, we are likely to see bankruptcy in this country. This country, take it from me, is heading for a debt default. And when that happens, our situation will be as in Greece and in Argentina. Take note, people. Read what Praveen Gordon is saying in his budget review, pages 39 and page 69.
Jazakumullah. Our third question now, 1 minute per representative. The President said, and I think it was the theme of his State of the Nation address, that we have a good story to tell. Do you agree? We start with Ms. Ajman.
I don't agree, because that is why we coined our slogan, One Vision, One Future, because we have to start thinking on the same line. You want to think of nation building, social cohesion, and that is the aim of the government, then you've got to think, you've got to change mindsets, and we have to be on the same wavelength. We as a minority front have always been helping organizations, whether it's women, children, youth, and even the religious organizations now. Because money is being misspent and misappropriated, we are not getting these things. We're not getting the civil sector strengthened in the civic forums, which are supposed to be watchdogs and which are supposed to be maintaining the moral code in our country. But also we're looking at full employment. I mean, the ANC is looking at just casual jobs. We're looking at what our country should be doing now, full employment. That means entrepreneurship, universities, family businesses being promoted, and not just any energy sector investment in 5 coal mines that is going to enrich a few politicians, but rather sustainable, renewable, green energy.
EFF from Philip.
Yeah, there's no good story to tell. I don't think they even understand the meaning of good. How can you have a good story to tell when you kill people, when they're asking for life? Water is life. People were killed in Mututlung, in Relela, in Fixberg, or asking for water. It can't be a good story. People were killed in Marikana for 12,500. It can't be a good story. The same mine workers, they are employed by the same company in Australia that is paying the mine workers 3 times what they are earning here in South Africa. So it can't be a good story. We are having a situation here in Tembisa where 30 families, they share 1 toilet. Is that a good story? Here in Hamaskara, people are asking for houses. The government does not have the land to give so that they can build houses. The land belongs to the white people who are dead long time ago. Now they can't even build houses for the people. So there's no good story to tell. I hear my comrade of ANC saying the ANC wants to retain human dignity. How do you retain human dignity when you don't give people toilets? Are you going to have dignity when you are sharing one toilet being 30 families? It can't be correct.
Time. Thank you. Kenny?
I think since there's 2 governments in this country, we must extend not just the good story, but also talk about the ones who say they tell a better story. I think we need to tell a true story. And the true story is unemployment rate is very high. The true story is the Cape Metro has become the capital city of murder through gang violence. Drug trade has become an economic system in our communities. That is a true story, and both governments have done nothing about it. In the colored and other areas, Indian areas, people are still paying rental for flats, which is an injustice that was created by apartheid government. However, that has not been corrected. So that is not a true story. Yet government says it is its responsibility to provide shelter to its citizens. But when it comes to minorities, they pay rent in buildings that are owned by government. That is not a true story.
Time. Thank you. Ismail?
Of course, every opposition party will say that there isn't a good story to tell. If they do that, they have to throw in the towel and not contest these elections. For the ANC, I think it's very, very simple. The Gauteng economy today is worth 1 trillion rands. The Western Cape government, where the DA is ruling, is not nearly halfway that mark as yet. This is under an ANC government. 1 trillion rands, that's the worth of the Gauteng economy. We've built the Gautrain. We've hosted one of the best World Cups that the world has seen in its entire history. Look at Brazil today. They are a few weeks away from the World Cup. They've got street riots at the moment, right now at the moment. In terms of the provision of services, 5 million people were gainfully employed since 1994. Total number of people employed at the moment is 14 million. 1.4 million university students, higher education students, have received national financial aid. 5,000 farms have been redistributed in terms of the land restitution program. Over 16 million South Africans receive the grant at the moment.
Abdul Razak Nurbhai, Al Jamaa.
Tell. It is when you have a better story to tell. In the 20 years of ANC rule, all the symptoms of a government out of its debts have grown worse. I'll give a few examples. Life expectancy in this country has declined from 65 years to 53 years. In 2007, South Africa became a net food importer for the first time in history. The elimination of agricultural subsidies by the government led to the loss of 600,000 farm worker jobs and the eviction from commercial farming sectors of about 2.4 million between 1997 and 2007. Let's look at the e-toll. There is a 20 billion rand bill that must be paid. Taxis have been exempted. For the average road user, tariffs have already been reduced twice.
Time. DA?
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying, number one, that when we talk about a good story, we need to look at it within the context of a contract that we make when we vote for a party. Now, I don't disagree that there is a good story to tell over the last 20 years. But where my disagreement comes is within the last 5 years, where the ANC has changed and it is a party that is in regression. It has taken South Africa backwards, where whatever little progress or progresses in pockets that were made pre-2009 is now being reversed. So that must be understood. It was said that the Gauteng economy is worth 1 trillion. Let me state something that's a bit closer to home, because you talk about equality. And why is it that you have a gap between the rich and the poor which is growing? The city of Cape Town is the most equal city in this country, metro in this country. It's true. The city of Johannesburg, together with the Buffalo City Metro.
Let's keep our peace.
These are facts. The city of Johannesburg is the least unequal city within South Africa. Land redistribution. 90% of government's land reform, by their own admission, has been a failure. Now, when we talk about that good story, it's not a good story. Thanks.
Farouk?
Over the last 5 years, this is what we have had. In Kanjla, rising protests, police brutality, looting of the state resources, the secrecy law, over-indebtedness, rising inflation, interest rates going up, rand falling down, highest inequality in the world, massive joblessness, country is technically bankrupt, government is technically bankrupt. That is not a good story by any stretch of the imagination. We are saying in COPE that the situation in the last 5 years has worsened to such an extent that people are going to wake up to an immense shock. Believe it or not, 2016 is the time when you are going to experience what the ANC did in the last 5 years to bring this country down to its knees. From what Mandela had raised up, Zuma has put it right down. Down, down, down.
Thank you. And I'd like to just acknowledge all of the representatives there for their contribution. Can we have silence, please? Thank you. We now move on to the next round, and that's where I get to ask a few follow-up questions. But in the interim, Brother Faisal and Brother Ijaz, you can start getting indication from participants in the crowd who would like to ask questions. We'll queue you up. We might not take everybody in one batch, but we'll try and do it in rounds. I'm just going to ask a few follow-up questions in that same order, because once we start taking questions, then there will be no particular order. Mr. Rajbansi, starting with you, there is a fear that the late Mr. Rajbansi was a well-known politician, charismatic, but he's no longer around. And that the current leadership, including yourself, with all due respect, don't have that much of political experience, nor the adequate levels of charisma. And for how much longer can you continue to run off his team?
Well, I think that fear is founded and unfounded for many reasons. Mr. Rajbansi had been in politics for more than 50 years. Now, if you compare me, I'm there almost 17 years. But I've been trained by Mr. Rajbansi. And a few of the other members...
How many years did you spend under his tutorship?
I would say 13 years.
Is that adequate to head a party?
Well, the fact that I have withstood all the challenges for the last 2.5 years, we could have been swallowed up if I was not strong enough and if I didn't know my politics well. But let me tell you that because our party was started on a noble intention and because we have people to serve and we already have the infrastructure in our party, and the fact that it was a strong foundation with a good backing and a good support from KwaZulu-Natal, we have lasted the distance. No matter how much of money power was put in the last 2.5 years to destroy us, we have never
You've spoken
fallen.
in your introductory remarks a lot about minorities and wanting to have a ministry for minorities. We know that the majority of people in this country are black. If they hear the kind of policies that you have in mind, why would they consider voting for the minority front? You're only talking about minorities.
Yeah, well, a minority, an individual is the smallest unit of a minority. So even a black African can be a minority in a given situation. Remember, the definition of minority is just not small in number. It may be an affected group, whether it's by language, whether it's by some ethnic denomination, whether it's even in an economic classification. So you can have a lot of poor people and you can have a few elite people, but they can be a minority in a country.
All right, thank you. EFF. Mr. Malema and various representatives of your party have left no stone unturned in vilifying his former boss, Mr. Zuma. And a lot of what we hear pertains to Nkandla and the Public Protector's report in regards to that. A lot pertains to the charges that he has hanging over his heads. My question to you, what's the difference then between Malema and Zuma? There's a Public Protector's report that's highly scathing in its criticism of Malema with regards what happened in Polokwane. There's also charges that hangs over his head. He wants to settle with SARS, so he's indicating that he did cheat the tax man. That's why he's willing to settle. So there are those who would argue the charges over Zuma's head, the charges over Malema's head. There's questions over Zuma's financial affairs. There's questions over Malema's financial affairs. The Public Protector is found against Zuma. She's found against Malema. What's the difference?
Yeah, there's a difference. You can't compare Malema with Zuma. Malema is not running away from the court. He's attending each and every single court to answer to those charges. He's always been saying, bring them on, I'll answer. Zuma is running away, and you all know that. He's running away, literally doing everything in his power to make sure he doesn't get
all within the law.
To the court.
All of his running away is within what is allowed by the law.
Yeah, but he's running away. All we are saying is that let him have his day in court, like anybody else. Let him have his day in court. Why is he avoiding to go to court? Malema has not yet avoided going to court. He's been going to court.
He's had no choice. He's had no choice. He's been forced to come to court. His charges have been laid against him.
Zuma must also go to court.
All right. Malema has always said, after he was expelled from the ANC, and after SARS went after him, took his properties, took his money, and I see Kenny shaking his head there, that I've got no money. I got no money to pay 16 million rand to SARS. He had no money to pay the 600,000 rand to contest the elections. He said that they had to borrow money and they had to sell berets to make money. Yet he's living a lavish lifestyle. It came up in a press conference yesterday. So if he's living a lifestyle that's so lavish, but he's got no money to settle SARS, he's publicly saying they've taken all my assets, his party is saying we got no money to pay the deposit, where's the funding coming for that lavish lifestyle? For that BMW parked in the parking lot? For the Mercedes that's transporting him everywhere? Who's funding him?
You want Malema to sell his clothes and he can come to the press conference naked. Then
No.
say he's
I'm
not
talking
doing
about a
that.
lavish lifestyle. I'm talking about Louis Vuitton shoes. Louis Vuitton shoes.
Yeah, but he's always had that. I'm asking, must he sell those things because he's always had it?
A man who says he doesn't have money doesn't wear Louis Vuitton shoes. Ask Kenny, he knows.
I'm asking you, must he sell his shoes? Must he sell
All right, silence. Let her answer.
I'm asking, he had all those things even before. So I'm asking you, must he sell them now because he's now
Settle with SARS. He'll get some money for the Louis Vuitton shoes. All right.
We are very poor. We don't have money. We are funding the organization out of our own pocket.
You got a smart BM parked outside. Tongue in cheek. Thank you.
We are funding
Kenny.
the organization out of our own pocket.
All right,
We
thank
don't
you.
have money.
Can we have silence so that we can hear the responses of the various representatives? Please, let's maintain silence. I'm asking for respect from all the party followers. Kenny, I know you're going to say sushi, and eating sushi of the body of a semi-naked woman is a tradition in Japan, but this is South Africa. But I don't want to go into all of those details. You know that the majority of South Africans are on the wrong side of affluence, if we can put it that way. You live this lifestyle that's a smack in their face. How do you expect them to vote for you when you're the man who, instead of saying, well, fine, I can enjoy the fruits of my labor, you're flaunting it and you're taking it to extremes, like eating sushi of the body of a naked woman?
I did not invent opulence. White people did. I did not invent expensive cars. I found them on this land.
Is that your justification?
So, no.
That you're going to do as the white man did?
So I'm saying to you, when a black man celebrates his success, he is being criticized because he makes some poor white people feel inadequate.
Patrice
Now,
Motsepe
black
doesn't
people-
celebrate success by eating sushi of a woman.
Yes, that is how they want you to celebrate your success.
What's wrong with that?
Under the table, behind closed doors, so that you don't make them look poor and foolish and stupid. So I am not going to apologize for working hard and celebrating my success. However, you must remember, the reason ordinary people call me their role model and they always cheer me is because they know charity that I do. I help them, I bury them, I take their kids to university, I take their kids to schools, and I don't use charity as a PR exercise. I do it. The right hand what it does, the left hand doesn't see.
All right.
And
Now,
I have now put my money into politics.
Okay,
this
I get
is
you.
part of my charity.
I'm going to rush
what
you
I'm
because we got many questions to get through. There are many women sitting here tonight, all right? You have, in the minds of many sane, mature women, objectified women. You walk around, maybe now you don't, and you'll say, I've turned my back on that lifestyle, but that would be a convenient turning of back because it's elections. You walk around with this harem of women, this multitudes of girlfriends. You objectify women. That is an insult to many women. How do you expect them to vote for you?
I think objectifying, if there's anyone that objectifies women, is the TV programs that put women to walk on catwalks.
We're not voting for them. We're not voting for those producers.
Exactly. I use models, just like European television stations use models. Those are models, and they work and they get
paid.
paid.
So you admit you do objectify women?
And believe me, I pay them more than anyone else.
So you do objectify them?
I don't objectify them. I don't objectify
Okay,
them. That's
thank
why you see many of them around me.
If you look at the campaigns of most of the opposition parties, is not all of them, the DA here is talking about Zuma's ANC. Let's be honest, Ismail Bhai. You're sitting with a compromised president. Your campaign would have been much, much easier if, for example, Motlanthe was heading the party. I know all the stories about democracy and it was a democratic choice in Mangaung. I want an honest answer for you. Would it have been easier to campaign as an ANC man if Zuma was not the president and Motlanthe was?
Zuma had not been charged in a court of law for anything at the moment.
Quiet.
When he was charged for rape, he appeared in court, he testified, and he acquitted. No other charges had been put before him. On the issue of Nkandla, I think let's take it head on.
Quiet. Just hold this moment.
The fact that the media, the fact that the media could expose what is happening in Nkandla is the strength of our democracy. The fact that an interministerial committee investigated the matter and reported is the strength of our democracy.
But
the fact that the public protector could report on it unhindered is the strength of our democracy.
It is, but it reflects
the fact that
negatively on the
Parliament is
president.
today discussing this matter is the strength of our democracy.
But that's not the point, Ismail Bhai.
And the fact that the president himself, Zuma himself, has signed the proclamation for this special investigation unit to investigate what is happening
Are you sitting with a compromised president?
Might not be the favorite of anybody, but all surveys show he remains the most popular leader compared to the leaders of any other party in this country.
Okay. All right. Abdul Razak, a few weeks ago, you sat with me in studio at ITV. And one of the questions I asked you, there is a person within the Muslim community who's known to be very extreme in his views. And he took out an endorsement of your party. And he said that I endorse the Al-Jama'ah party because they have given me a commitment that they will go to parliament only to be a voice of protest. And they won't participate in legislative processes because they find that to be un-Islamic. And a whole host of other commitments that he claimed you made. You categorically denied on air at the time and in a subsequent interview on Radio Islam that you made no such commitment to this particular individual who's well known in Muslim circles. He now produces a letter from your national leader, where your national leader, Mr. Hanif Hendrik, says that you got tripped up by my questioning and you answered incorrectly. And he reaffirms here that we will only be a voice of the Muslim community should we reach parliament. And he writes that Hanif Hendricks, the leader of Al-Jama'ah, has given us the assurance that his party will not be part of the law-making process since this is in conflict with the Quran. And you will take a similar approach to that of the PAC by not participating in law-making process. The PAC only applies that when it comes to land reform. You will apply that across the board. And your leader writes in this letter, he says, interviewers tripped up my party spokesperson. I will place an embargo on our officials speaking and debating law-making and refer to me. All they have to say is that we are in the legislature as a defensive measure and we do not take part in law-making process. So this extreme element within the Muslim community re-endorses you based on an assurance that your leader has given to him in writing, contradicting what you said to me, that you made no such assurance.
I think every alim in the country, first and foremost, like I said, you know, we broken an accord with some of the most radical and controversial alims in the country.
Have you made an agreement with the Majlis?
There is no.
Yes or no? Have you made an agreement with the Majlis?
There is no agreement, any written agreement made with the Majlis.
Assurance that your leader is giving him that you're going to go to Parliament.
No, let me clarify myself. Our reassurance is, for example, if there's any lawmaking process that's going to be contrary to the Sharia, and we said we will not partake in that.
This is not what he's saying. And Abdul Razak, the last time I mentioned to you on air that if what he has stated in public regarding your party is not true, then why don't you clarify it? And since then you haven't clarified it. And since this letter, which he reproduces of your leader, you're not clarifying. What you're saying is different, but you're not clarifying.
No.
So either you lying or your leader is lying.
No, there's no lie in it. First and foremost, let's be quite clear in this. We are a faith-based party, and we like we said from the beginning, our roots are entrenched in Islam. You know? And anything that's going to be contrary to the Sharia, unlike other Muslim parliamentarians that were in Parliament, and when certain bills were passed.
Let's stick to this issue for the time being. What level of agreement do you have with the Majlis?
There is no level. We have levels of agreement with many ulama. We visited ulama in Campton Down. We visited ulama in Escort.
So if there's no level of agreement, then this means the second. Please maintain silence. I got the chair here. Maintain silence. If this is the letter that is produced, the second one, why haven't you clarified
Where does that letter come from?
It's on his website.
Does it come from Al-Jama'ah or does it come
He is making statements regarding your leader. So if it's not true, why don't you clarify?
That's what I'm clarifying, that any lawmaking process that's against the grain of the Sharia. Let me give an example. 2009, when we went to sign the Code of Conduct at Gallagher Estate, the current president, Jacob Zuma, came and shook our hand. And his words to us was, where was your voice when the abortion bill and where the Same-Sex Marriages Act was passed? Where was your Muslim voice? Our answer to him was, no, there are Muslim parliamentarians. And his answer to us that those Muslim MPs, even though they asked for a vote of conscience, they still had to toe the party line.
Okay.
And on that basis, he told us that,
all right.
that now, you needed your... No,
to wrap this up.
Finish.
Let me finish. I'm rushing everybody.
That you
Listen to me.
You needed a voice
Abdul Razak,
in Parliament.
Right. Let's just wrap this up. you're obviously saying something very different to what he's saying now in a second publication. Can you give this House a commitment tonight that your party will take out a clarification saying that what he has said regarding your party is not true? Just that commitment. Yes or no? Are you willing to make that
commitment is that we will partake in the lawmaking process as long as it's not against the grain of the Sharia.
With regards to what he's saying here, it's different from what you're saying. Will you clarify? Can you commit to clarify?
When the abortion bill was passed,
the question is simple.
When the abortion bill was passed,
clarifying that this is not true.
You know, we have, like I said, we have brokered a deal between very, very controversial and so-called radical ulama. I think now Al-Jamaa's role is we have to broker a deal with ulama bodies that are involved in a chicken dispute.
I'm asking you a simple question. Are you willing to make a commitment tonight that you'll clarify this?
Our commitment is that if we are sticking to the Sharia, we will not take
I'm asking about this document. Will you clarify it or not? All right, let's move on to the DA. Yusuf, you talk about Jacob Zuma's ANC and you talk about it at length. But let's be honest, it was not rosy between Mbeki and Tony Leon. Mbeki used to ignore him towards the end of his tenure. Let me just go to you one or two things. There was a DA MP, Dr. Buleka Mbulewa, who even criticized Madiba, who said Madiba's government did little to change the quality of life of Africans. He said this in Parliament towards the end of the tenure of Madiba. There is a poster that I've seen, a billboard of the DA, where they put a picture of Mbeki next to Mugabe. And they say, this is what Mbeki stands for, the DA stands for human rights. And now you come to us and you say, Mbeki had a good story to tell and Mandela had a good story to tell, but Zuma doesn't have a good story to tell. Are you suffering from convenient amnesia in terms of the first 15 years?
Thank you, Maulana. Maulana, the DA has never changed its stance, whether it was on Mbeki or anything else. In fact, we still maintain that Mbeki's AIDS denialism has cost South Africans hundreds of thousands of lives.
But Musi Memani says Mbeki's his mentor.
No, he's never said that, actually.
He said that.
But let me clarify.
He's been inspired by the IMF
Can I allow me, Maulana, to clarify our message? Our message is very clear. We've opposed whatever wrongs has happened, whether it was under Madiba's presidency, whether it was under Mbeki's presidency, and we continue to do that. But our message in acknowledgement is to acknowledge, as to say that at least during Madiba's presidency and Mbeki's presidency, there was progress being made in the lives of ordinary South Africans. Even that, Maulana, has been reversed under Jacob Zuma.
So you're saying the last 5 years have been no progress? Zilch.
No, I'm saying that the progress that was starting to be made by those presidencies or those cabinets and those governments are being reversed. It's why we have 1.4 million more people unemployed now than in 2009. It's why, Maulana, that our economic growth... It's why our economic growth has dipped on an average of under 2%.
Mbeki and Zuma didn't have a recession to deal with, but we'll talk about that when we discuss economy. Let's move on to the second question that I have for you. You say you're a representative party, but let's look at your list. And don't tell me about the lower level lists. We're talking now about the higher level. In terms of the top 20, they stand to form part of Helen Zille's cabinet if she wins the DA. Only 5 are non-white. In terms of the top 20 in Gauteng, who stand to form Musi Memani's cabinet if he is successful as premier in this province, only the top 5 are white. So you had to go and rent a lady with, or non-white, yeah. You had to go and rent a lady with a black face to be your presidential candidate. You have a serious problem when it comes to race.
No, I disagree. If you look at our list, number one, you must agree, and everyone must agree, if we have to look at it, that it is the most diverse list from any political party that even stands here today. No, it's the truth. No, it's the truth. No, it's the truth. But let me speak about some of the allegations we made in Mlana. We've spoken about this previously, even on ITV, you'll remember. Mampela, Rampela, and whatever happened there, it was very simple. It was in the process of uniting the opposition in the process of realignment of politics. It has nothing to do with renting a blackface. Nobody said when Patricia de Lille was our mayoral candidate in 2011 that we were renting a colored face. All of a sudden we are saying we are renting a blackface, so maybe we are practicing amnesia in our critique. But the fact is, when you look at our lists, and when you look at us at the DA as a party, whether it is from 94, from 2009 and beyond, we have diversified faster than any other party. Right. Our top six, Mlana, no, allow me, because you have made an allegation. Our top 6 of the party, let's look at the top 6. There are 2 whites, 2 coloreds, one colored and 3 black people in our top 6 leadership.
Those are the faces, but in terms of the
this
province,
is the top 6.
You're going to lead in the Western Cape.
When we talk about the top 6 of the ANC or any party, that's how you divide the party.
Only 5 non-whites in your top 20. That's the province.
No, I actually disagree with that, man. And sometimes what the media does, it'll take a list. It'll look at names. I'll give you an example.
Your leader in the Western Cape has acknowledged that.
I disagree with that, number one. The second thing is that you also have to acknowledge is that when you look at our list, you also have to look at our parliamentarian lists. A lot of our black members and our black leadership have also opted
the actual power
to go
is in
into
the
our
Western Cape.
parliamentarian
Anyway,
list.
there's another issue I need to move on to, and that's the issue of your performance in the Western Cape.
Yes.
I spoke to Ibrahim Rasool this afternoon. He said, this is his opinion, I want you to respond to it. He said it was the fastest growing province economically with the economic growth of 5.8% under his premiership. Now Gauteng is no longer the Western Cape. Tony Heinrich issued a challenge to Helen Zille. He wanted to debate her in public to prove that the Western Cape is not the most or the least unequal society or province in South Africa, but the most. And that you still support white privilege. And there's a lack of integration between white and black people. She didn't take that up. Why?
Okay, Malana, let me first look at Tony Ehrenreich. Tony Ehrenreich wants to debate. It's the same reason why Jacob Zuma, we still don't ask him why is he not debating as the presidential candidate.
So Zille does what Zuma does?
No.
If Zuma says he won't debate, Zille won't debate.
My question is this. Tony Ehrenreich has been a populist. Why does Marius Fransman, who is the premier candidate, not come and have a debate with Helen Zille?
Got to lose
it's a very simple principle, but let's look at the allegations. When they say that the DA does not look at poor communities, the facts are very clear. And in fact, Africa Check has gone and verified our checks, and they have even said that we have understated our performance. And the performance is very simple. Within the Western Cape, close to 80% of our budget is spent on poor communities, even within the cities that we govern. That is a fact. You cannot say that a government that spends 80% of its budget on poor communities is anti-poor and pro-white privilege. When we say that, it's illogical and it's flawed logic. When we look at, for example, the best run province, and Ibrahim Rasool, I've seen some of the things he said, and it's not backed up by any facts. The South African Institute of Government Auditors has said that the Western Cape is the best run province under the DA.
All right.
When we look at the city of Cape Town,
I got your point. Thank you.
Within 3 years of governance, we tripled the housing delivery.
Farouk Bhai, you spoke very well about what COPE stands for and that you came from the womb of the ANC. But let's be honest, Farouk Bhai, the last 5 years, you've had 15 court battles. The 2 elephants in the party have been fighting each other. And even the elephant that's defeated might be out, but the elephant that was victorious is highly wounded, is aging, and is now embroiled in a sex scandal. And really, you can talk about policy and you can talk about theory, but in reality, what can COPE offer if for 5 years you've been killing each other? And for 5 years you've been struggling to find your feet, other than to say, yeah, it was the ANC who infiltrated and it caused all the harm within our ranks. Surely you have to acknowledge that it's difficult to have confidence in your party if you spent so much of money fighting 15 court battles in the last 5 years, and now you're saying, we are going to be the savior of South Africans.
Yeah, and look, if there is someone who does something wrong, then you must have the courage to be able to say, yes, that's wrong, and accept it. Because if you can't accept it, then you have a morally flawed situation. Thabo Mbeki used to say, and he used to quote Lenin, and he said, better few, but better. Meaning that even if you are very small, but if you are standing on issues where you are presenting the truth, you're presenting the facts. Now, you see, I have been making this the statements about our economy and where we are going. I've been making this now for weeks. I've been making it on the basis of what's in this book. If I'm wrong, people should be standing up and challenging.
You see the man sitting to your right, the DA man. You know why he talks about Jacob Zuma's ANC? Because he wants to appeal to those who left the ANC because of Zuma out of Polokwane. You see the EFF sitting there, the Minority Front, the Patriotic Alliance, Al Jama'ah. They're all eyeing that 1.3 million votes that you guys got because you've imploded. Now my question is, all these people, apart from the ANC, are eyeing the votes that you have. All analysts are saying you're going to drop from 7 to between 4 and 5% at best. We can't have confidence in you to take the country forward, surely.
Now, surely you need people who are going to be able to focus not on the personalities but on issues. And even if we are few in number and we are pointing out to the country what the dangers are that are lurking for them, And when they see, for example, in 2 years that what Cope was saying actually materialize, at that point, we could get a landslide.
Quick question. There are many religious people sitting in the gathering, and they hold very strongly to religious values. It's the second sex scandal that Monsieur Lakota is implicated in now with the fellow member from the party. That's not going to go down well with the religious people. They don't have confidence in such leaders.
Absolutely not. I mean, if it's, if what is being now alleged in the city press and elsewhere happens to be true, then it's going to be a case that has to be answered by him. Okay, absolutely.
Right, let's go to the floor now. I see a long queue. Faisal and Ijaz, if you can just coordinate as they came, and remember the rule. If you have clothing of a particular party, and then you're obviously a supporter of that party, you can't question your own representative. You've got to cross-question because we want to stimulate the debate.
I'm Tumisani from the EFF. Chairperson, with your respect, I wanted to ask my representative on the stage a question, but I want you to...
Yeah, and one question per person, so keep it brief.
Yes, it will be. The ANC and the DA, they just lied before us now. They have said they also stand for a free education. In fact, we know that the EFF stand on free education is that they will provide free education from the grade 0 to the first degree of tertiary institution. So the ANC and also the DA, they are saying that they stand for the same. But they just told us that they stand for the same, but they will do that through NEFSAS. We all know that NEFSAS is not a free education. NEFSAS is a loan. I just want them to explain themselves on that and not lie to us to say that they will be providing free education to all of us.
Okay, thank you. The next gentleman.
Mr. Kenny,
Thank you.
My question to you is, you were in prison, it's public knowledge. It's public knowledge you did a recording in prison while young boys were being raped. To date, have you apologized to the families and those young boys that were raped in prison? Secondly, did you receive any payment from government not to release the full video of that recording in that prison cell? Thank you.
The next brother. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I want to pose a question to the brother from the DA, Mr. Yusuf Qasim.
Yeah.
Mr. Yusuf, firstly, what is your and your leader's stance on the Palestinian issue? Secondly, Helen Zelako commented that African and colored people are refugees in the Western Cape. Does the DA confirm this statement? Thirdly, one of the funders of the DA is the same man that funded the building of the wall in apartheid Israel. Are you people accepting blood money for your campaign in South Africa?
Okay.
Thank you so much for giving the opportunity. I would like to pose my question. My name is Chris Masango, ANC Lenasia. My question is posed to the young lions, Yusuf Qasim. Yusuf, I've got a printout of your Gauteng provisional list. I was so privileged to print 49. Out of first 49,
which province? Gauteng.
Gauteng, yes, Gauteng provisional list for DA. Out of 49, which I was privileged to print out, only 9 out of 49 is Africans. I'm talking of blacks, not colors, not Indians. Only 9 is blacks. I was privileged again to make a printout of your A4 page is comprised of 39. I printed 5 of your national list, which I've got 195 name list. Out of, again, of 195 name list, only 33 are blacks. My question then to you, I've seen like the trends of voting, especially from the African people, black in particular. They've been lately voting for you, especially on the 18th of May, 2011 at the local government elections. What is this which you are going to give back to them? Because I've seen they are not appearing. And 3 weeks ago, we had your premier candidate, Musi, said the process, you guys, you only need people to apply. So are you then saying as DA, the blacks' votes are not useful?
Okay. We've got your question. Thank you. We'll leave it there for a moment. Let me just get some responses. We'll come back to you. Whoever wants to pose questions, you can join the queue. We'll take a few at a time. Let's...
Can I just make one point before? Just one point.
No, we're going to just focus the questions. I'll get back to you.
On the question you had asked me, you see, Musiwa Likota has a child in Cape Town who goes to Islamia school. Now, this child, he's acknowledged this child bears his name.
Love child.
Well, whatever, but the fact is that he is doing his fatherly duty and is attending to the needs of this child.
Ismail, the question about education and giving people loans is not really solving the problem, because you're burdening them. Once they graduate, then they got that burden of repaying.
The NC's policy is very clear in education. In an ideal world, we would want free education from the reception year up to your higher education phase. But this country hasn't got all the resources. We're at a point now where almost 80% of public schools are no-fee schools, and where people are paying fees, that's done through the SGBs and through a voluntary process of supporting education. We accept that in the higher education or tertiary education phase, there's a dire need. Thousands of good students with good academic results, good matric results, are not able to access university or higher education because of the fee factor.
Okay.
And what government is doing through the National Financial Aid scheme is to support them.
Kenny, the brother raised the question there about the time that you were in prison and the rape of boys, and apologies to the family and the videotape. Your quick response.
I've never raped anyone when I was in prison. And in fact, we are the ones who recorded the rapes. We recorded prison warders selling young boys to older inmates for as little as 50 rands and 10 rands. We recorded prison warders smuggling in guns to inmates.
What happened to those recordings?
Those recordings were all over in 2002. Where was he? Those made world news. It was all over television. It was all over the world. In fact, correctional services wanted to have us murdered. I wish that we could ask politically driven questions, because we are here discussing the future of this country and the policies of the different organizations.
There was a number of issues raised with regards to the DA. Yusuf, I'm going to ask you to be very specific in your answers.
Yes,
Let's take the Palestinian issue first. And I know...
No, I just want to start off, because the question on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme was also posed to me as well.
Go ahead.
So please allow me, and give me sufficient time so that I can go through each one.
I'm giving everybody as much time as I can. I'm going to rush everybody.
But I have more questions, so at least give me sufficient time. Let me talk about higher education. I talk as a former SRC president myself at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. When the ANC talks about free education, of course it has lied to us, and now we've just had confirmation from Brother Ismail that they're saying it cannot be resourced. And our policy is quite simple. When we look at NSFAS, currently it forms part of a loan. So students have to pay that money back and interest accumulates. What we are saying is that when a student graduates, the entire cost of the loan must be converted into a bursary. That is free education. They don't have to pay a cent back. And we are saying that no student will be left behind, because we have done our research. 16 billion rand must be allocated. At the beginning of this year, the ANC failed by having a 2.6 billion rand shortfall from 2013.
So
we have a proper alternative.
I was just right. Now you said the ANC has lied. Just tell us how.
I'll tell you how. When ANC MPs or the leaders go out, they make certain political statements. For example, they talk about, we are going to bring free higher education. And Ismail has just said that they cannot resource it, or they do not think they can resource it. So obviously that's a contradiction.
Quick response?
No, I don't think we've made a claim that we're going to give free higher education. It's very, very clear. We are supporting students who are in dire need, who don't have the financial means. And of course, it's a student loan. When you qualify, the correct thing is to pay back so that somebody else can benefit.
Okay. Now the Palestinian issue, right? Let's cut a long story short. We know you can talk about the DA having a similar policy from your perspective to the ANC, and you support a two-state solution. Is there any record, public statement of Helen Ziller or any other senior leader of the DA that you can show to us or refer us to, where they have condemned Israel and where they have acknowledged that Israel is an apartheid state? Any such reference that you can give us here tonight?
We have had this discussion before, and I see how you tried to frame the question.
It's a simple question.
No, it's a simple question.
Answer.
I can give you an answer. In 2011, for example, there was a statement condemning what was then massive violence against Palestinians. So I can answer that very simply.
Did they refer to Israel as an apartheid state?
No, it hasn't. But
Is the DA willing to refer to Israel as an apartheid state?
I'm willing to stand here.
Is the DA?
I'm a representative of the DA. Malana, by the way, I sit on the federal executive, and I'm able to, so please don't undermine my position here today, Malana. Let me be very clear on this, and I want to speak on the points that were made, because that was the question that was made on air by the brother who was asking questions. Let's talk about an apartheid state.
No, let's not move away from the question that you haven't answered. No. Listen.
We condemn,
Why hasn't Helen Ziller or Musi Maimani or Lindiwe Mazibuku called Israel an apartheid state? I had a 25-minute interview with Helen Ziller last year, and she on public radio refused to call them an apartheid state. So I'm not undermining your position. Sure. I'm asking you to clarify
let me tell you why. Let me tell you why, because I've had this conversation with the leadership of the party. In fact, when I had this conversation with Lindiwe herself, she even had to say that there are certain parts of Israeli policy that is worse than apartheid state.
Why don't they want to call Israel an apartheid state? Let's not talk about the remainder of the policy.
No, I've answered your question. When we talk about Palestine and the Israeli issue, we are saying that there are, and I can say it on public record, there are various actions of the Israeli government that is worse than apartheid state. Now, we cannot just pigeonhole it into a South African, because remember, the term of an apartheid state came from a South African context. You can't make that comparison blanket across
now,
countries.
I'm going to get to the other issues that were posed to you, but on the Palestinian issue, Al-Jama'ah, you guys have an issue going on there in Cape Town between yourselves and the DA. They want to take you to the electoral court because they say you're sending out pamphlets suggesting it's haram to vote for the DA because they're supporting Palestine. Briefly, what's your gripe with their stance on Palestine?
First and foremost, we know that the guy that's funding the DA, and it came out when Khang was going to merge with the DA. And we know that the person who came out and said he is funding both parties, he holds shares in Megel Security Company.
Do you have evidence that Nathan Kirsch has said he supports the DA financially?
Yes.
Where's the evidence?
Helen Zille has admitted herself that she is on friendly terms with...
Friendly terms doesn't mean he's giving money.
With Nathan Kirsch has
evidence before. We're still waiting.
Can I just finish? Nathan Kirsch has openly admitted that he is funding the DA and he is funding Ahmad.
He hasn't.
But let's come to the bottom of the problem also. If we speak of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, you know, and we've said it, and we've said it in the Muslim views as well, that Palestine has now become an election issue. And it's a huge issue. Palestine has become a huge issue. Firstly, with the DA, their stance on the Palestine-Israeli issue, they don't want to openly state on what is the issue.
All right, this is only the... I'm coming back to you.
The question was
yes, but I'm getting discussion between candidates on the issue.
On the other hand, we also have the ruling party that refused Hamas leader Sheikh Yassin a visa to come to South Africa.
Okay. Ismail, Tony Leon has written in his book on the... Yes, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. Listen, I'm in charge of the process. Now show me the respect, right? I am allowing discussion between candidates because it's a election issue. It's an issue that's close to the hearts, and we'll do the same when we come to e-tolls. The question has been raised. It's posed to you. You'll respond. You'll get another chance to respond to what they're saying. But I want to hear other views as well for the benefit of the audience. Tony Leon has written in his biography, on the contrary, that he convinced Mbeki to convince Madiba not to allow the Hamas leadership to visit South Africa. Let's leave aside long stories, Ismail Bhai. To date, no one from the top brass of Hamas has visited South Africa under 20 years of ANC rule, and yet the ANC says it stands for the Palestinian cause. Why?
No, I think that, I don't know what Tony Leon has said and what discussions he had with Madiba or with former President Thabo.
Mbeki hasn't refuted it. That book is on the market for 7 years.
The issue is very simple. From a state protocol point of view, if you don't allow the late Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the Palestinian state, to come first to a country and allow the head of Hamas to come, it creates a protocol problem, it creates a diplomatic problem.
But Arafat is coming, Hamas doesn't come.
The government's position was very clear that late Sheikh Yassin would have been given a visa, but they were prepared to do that after the visit of Yasser Arafat because of diplomatic relationships between us and the PLO and the Palestinian state. On the issue of Hamas...
But Arafat came from Mandela's inauguration,
It is very, very simple. Khalima Motlanthe, when he visited Syria before the before the conflict is taking place now, formally and officially, because he was going there as the deputy president of the country on a formal visit to Syria, he met with Khalid Michel, former Minister of Intelligence, Ronnie Kessels. As part of his work, met with Khalid Michel. The ANC has contact with Hamas.
Can we look forward to an imminent Hamas leadership visit?
We don't make apologies
the question, can we look
if you want to find a solution to the Palestinian conflict, you have to make Hamas part of the equation. And
so they will be visiting South Africa.
We are very pleased that today both PLO, Fatah, and Hamas have signed a compact.
Do you believe the ANC is hypocritical when it comes to the Palestinian stance? On the one hand, they've taken a very pro-Palestinian stance publicly. We know what happened in Mangaung. But do you believe they're sincere in that?
Nothing the ANC has done has shown that they're sincere in anything. And I'll give you an example. The ANC has constantly had leaders come into our Muslims or come into various rallies and talking about sanctions on the Israeli government. As we speak today, trade between, or diplomatic ties between Pretoria and Tel Aviv still exists. The trade between South Africa and Israel is at the highest level it's ever been. And the Cape Town declaration or conference, whatever had taken place, it was shown up to be nothing more than a political stunt because there was nothing meaningful that came out from that. And in fact, what we saw was the fracturing within the ANC, that many in the ANC was against the entire process from the get-go.
Okay.
So,
are you willing as a DA, one minute, are you willing as a DA to allow for Khalid Mishal to visit South Africa?
Mulana, look, I don't know that politics quite, so I'm not going to be able to respond. What I can say on the sanction,
Thank you for your honest answer.
It's an Islamic value. If you don't know something,
I
we're
appreciate
going to say it 100%.
Let's be silent. Ismail.
Okay, but Mulana, let me allow you because I just made a statement.
We must ask a very clear
hypocrisy. You say you support Palestine, but then trade is booming with Israel.
No, there is no sanction policy from the ANC government.
But that's the reality.
Neither the PLO nor Hamas has officially called for sanctions to be applied against the state of Israel. We will be guided by the political representatives on those countries. Yes, there's a global movement, BDS campaign. Individual members of the ANC might support that. But I want to know from my friend here, Yusuf Qasim, if Khalid Mishal comes to this country, will the Jewish Defense League abstain from assassinating him or attempting to assassinate him?
Yusuf?
And what will be his party's policy?
I can't speak for the Jewish Defense League or whatever it is that Ismail is speaking.
Security companies linked to your party.
But what I can say, Mulana, is that our policy, and if you look at our foreign policy, it's quite simple. It's a human rights-based policy. We will talk to anybody who is interested in fighting against human rights, whatever the case may be. We will protect anybody in that regard.
Human rights in Israel, in Palestine.
We can guarantee that.
Human rights. Then why do you bring Glenys Breitenbach into your party when Nathan Kirsch has publicly said he funded her via the de Klerk Foundation, and he's the man, the chief architect of the Israeli apartheid wall? Why do you give the chief architect of the drone attacks, Barack Obama, the freedom of the city of Cape Town?
Okay.
That's contradiction with human rights.
I'm talking about, and please give me an opportunity, because it's been raised about 5 times that this man, Nathan Kirsch, is funding the DA. It's an absolute lie.
No, he funded Breitenbach, who's not part of the DA.
I want to get to that, but I wanted to deal with this first, because I actually found it quite disappointing myself when I looked at the Al Jamaa party and some of the lies they're telling South Africans. As a Muslim party, you cannot lie to South Africans again. Say you have evidence, and we are waiting weeks later, in fact over a month later, for that evidence. We haven't got it. But let me talk about Glenys Breitenbach, and let me talk about, for example, Nathan Kirsch in particular. Now, Nathan Kirsch, if he decided to fund the FW de Klerk Foundation, and the FW de Klerk Foundation decided to fund anyone where they
he said he wanted to fund Breitenbach via
please give me a chance. Please give me a chance before interrupting. And her court proceedings when she was part of the NPA or being expelled from the NPA, whatever the case may be, that is separate from a party process. We are not going to tell, for example, myself as Yusuf Qasim, if you are funded by a specific organization, now you represent them, because she's never ever represented the organization, but this is the point I want to make when it comes to Nathan Kirsch. It's very easy for people to level allegations without evidence. But in fact, it has been proven recently that there have been more allegations against the relationship between President Jacob Zuma and Nathan Kirsch. It was Lucky Lukele of the Swaziland Solidarity Network that said that it was common knowledge within Swaziland that Nathan Kirsch and Zuma were friends, and that in fact Zuma was being backed by Nathan Kirsch. Zuma has not disputed this, by the way. In fact, when his office was contacted, they refused to comment or to deny on these matters.
Obama and freedom of the city. Respond to that.
No, Mlana, I've been on your program before. I myself personally questioned that at the time, and I still condemn whether or not he was given. In fact, I condemn 2 things. I condemn, as a national leader of the party, I condemn that he was given the freedom of the city of Cape Town. And I also condemn that the ANC hosted President Obama.
Will you take it back?
I'm not. Look, I'm not in the power to take it back.
Leadership to take back
it was a process that was taken by the City Council of the City of Cape Town, and in fact, I will begin a process of imploring the leadership to try and reverse that process
One of the other questions that came towards you was about Zilla's refugee comments.
Yes, let me please. It was incorrect when the questioner said that Zilla referred to colored and black people as refugees in the Western Cape. That is incorrect.
What did she say?
What Zilla said and what Ellen said in a tweet that was made, in fact I have the tweet in front of me. She said that we need to sort out the education problem in the Eastern Cape, which is a very dire problem. And she said that there are many of those that are migrating from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape to seek better education and putting strain on the education system in the Western Cape. And she may have referred to those as refugees. She later retracted that. I want to tell you something, Molana. This comment has been blown out of proportion for political purposes. The comment was on educational migrants. Perhaps the wrong word was used at the time. Nomvula Mokanyane used the same comment when it came to health migrants in Gauteng. Isma Vadi will know about that.
All right.
So when we talk about
the last question was about lists. You touched on it at length.
Yes.
Just quick response to the brother. He's saying in Gauteng, from 49, only 9 are Africans, black. From the national list, 199 and 195, only 3 are black. Is that true or not? Let's leave the lengthy explanations. We've been there already.
Let me first, because I look at these figures that are given. He speaks about looking at 1 or 2 or 3 different lists. So I can say from the outside, these facts are distorted and untrue. And I want to caution, specifically the media and the community, when they look at our lists, you cannot look at a name and say this person is black or this person is white. We have a man within the party, his name is Otto Du Plessis.
But you can't get an indication.
A white
you
person
can't
or
get a
black
more or
person.
less
I'll tell him he's a black African person.
Ismail, quickly. I want to bring the other parties in. Quickly, I want to bring in the other parties.
Very easy. Here's the DA list. I'm going to give it to him as a gift. Right? Of the 200 names, of the 200 names on the National Assembly, 140 are white. On the Gauteng list, of the 73 names that the DA has got, 43 are white.
Where did you get that list from? Where did you get Ismail? Where did you get the list from?
From their website.
All right, you should study that list.
Let me just, because I don't want this to become.
I'll come back to you.
It's becoming a mudslinging issue. So please allow me, Lana.
Yeah, study the list.
You cannot look at names, Ismail, and I want to please implore you. You cannot look at names and say this person is a white and this person is
all right,
a black
you
person.
Tell us.
That is very disingenuous.
All right, let's solve it.
But I want to make something very clear, Malana. When we look at these lists,
let me pose a question to you.
We need to look at people in an electable position.
Yusuf, you tell us what percentage of your national list has blacks, Africans. You tell us. According to your list, what percentage? Plus, minus?
I can tell you in our list in totality. I'm not going to comment on black Africans in particular. In our list in totality, we have more than 50% that are non-white. If you look at our list in totality throughout the country, no, we don't use quotas within the party as to say so many Africans, so many colored, so many Indian,
I just want to bring in some of the other parties on some of the issues we've touched on. Mr. Rajbansi, do you want to comment on Palestine, on the refugee issue, or on the list?
Yeah, the Palestine issue, we have, for as long as I can remember, Mr. Rajbansi has ensured that in Durban we have been very, active with any group that would do a pro-Palestine march, or even in terms of giving awards to people, outstanding Muslim people like Labna Nadvi, when they take up the Palestinian issue.
Okay.
So we haven't been, we haven't been quite on that issue. On the issue of lists, well, we have never hid the fact that we are basically an Indian party. Our lists are full of Indians. And therefore, we are not going to come here and defend ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Umpile, with regards Palestine, the refugee, or the list, anyone that you want to talk about, or all three?
Okay, we are in solidarity with the Palestinians. They are in the same situation as we are. They are fighting for their land that has been taken by the Israelites. So we are equally in the same position with them. So as much as we are also going to be fighting for the land, they are fighting for that. On the issue of the list, we pride ourselves as the economic freedom fighters that in our list we've got male, female, male, female. 99% of the list is male, female, in that order. So we've got no issue. We don't even have to entertain other parties what they do or what they don't do. It's for DA to decide. But ourselves, we pride ourselves. We even beat ANC, which has been in existence for over 102 years, as they pride themselves.
Okay. Kenny?
Now we come back from being spectators. Look, the Palestinian issue is very, very clear. There's an injustice that is happening against the Palestinian people. And I think you trying to push for the young person to give a standpoint on DA, it's like chicken trying to defend Nando's. Helen Zille is a German Jew, you know.
She's an Anglican.
She's a German Jew.
He's saying she's an
She's
Anglican.
an Anglican. Why must we lie on live radio,
so
Malana?
at the
Can
end
we
of
trust
the day,
her?
no.
She's not Jewish. Why would you make that
She
lie?
is of German descent. Now you cannot expect Helen Zille to speak against the Jews.
No, but not every Jewish person is pro-Israel,
Yes,
Kenny.
but I'm saying, you cannot expect the DA to take a firm standpoint on the issue of Palestine and Israeli. And for any black man, a colored man, or an Indian man to vote the DA is like chicken voting Nando's.
Farouk?
Very clever.
Thank you, Maulana. What COPE would like to do is exactly what South Africa did to help Northern Ireland resolve years and years of problem. We would like an activist role for South African government and the parties that are in South African politics to help resolve the Palestinian issue so that Palestine can get total, free and just independence, because this is an issue that has gone on for too long. And the longer it remains unresolved, it poses a problem to the security of the world.
أوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا أوشك اليأس أن يغشى أمانينا.
Come, ma'am, please. One question and keep it brief.
My name is Tuli Dubazana from ANC Lenasia branch. My question goes to DA. Weekend I went to Cape Town and I had to see Nyanga and Kukuletu. Definitely the way they've built the RDP house, they don't even have a parking space for a car. If they want to take over Gauteng, are they going to build the same types of RDP houses? Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hamza. I'm from the ANC Lenasia branch.
Closer to the mic.
My question is to the EFF. You have been making unrealistic promises to the masses of this country. How do you intend maintaining that should you get a position in parliament? If it's a sustainable one, I'd like to know how you're going to sustain that. Thank
Can you
you.
give us one example of an unrealistic promise?
Mine workers 12,500 per month. Will that not also bring unemployment up again?
Okay, thank you for your question. Next.
My name is Nuku from EFF, and my question is directed to the ANC. I would like to know, why did you drop the standard of education from 50% to 30% and expect our kids to fare well at universities?
Thank you. Next question.
Okay, I'm part of the Patriotic Alliance. My question is for the ANC. As we young people, we believe in youth development. And with the ANC, the Youth League is kindly crippled at the moment. So we just want to find out who is the young leader who's going to lead the country at the moment, and how will the ANC be able to benefit the youth of this country? Because as we see what's going on, youth, they don't be able to get any benefits from the ANC.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I'll take one more for this round.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Zarif Menti. I'm the youth president of the Patriotic Alliance. My question then goes out to the fighter on stage, EFF. I was listening to one of your leaders, Dali Mpofu's comments on how should we improve the economy. So Dali comes out and says, to improve the economy, we have to give people more money. So if I'm not mistaken, that would mean us printing more money in South Africa. Now, if we're going to print more money in South Africa, it's going to lead to hyperinflation. So if you're going to call yourself the economic freedom fighters, what do you actually know about our economy? What's your comments on that?
Thank you. Let's start there with the EFF, because you were you were a bit out of the last round. Ompile, what do you know about the economy, says the young man. He says that you want to print money because you want to give more money and you think that's going to help the economy. You want to nationalize the mines. The other question is that all of this is unrealistic. I know the DA's Tim Harris in one debate said, so nationalize the mines and what will you do the day after? You don't have a plan. You just have rhetoric. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, the issue of nationalization of the mines is very simple. We've got companies that are state-owned entities here in South Africa. Transnet is one of them, and is doing excellently well. It's a state-owned enterprise. So what we are saying with the mines, we want the mines to belong to the state, and 60% of the profits must be retained here in South Africa. It's very simple. Transnet is a typical example, is doing that. It's not impossible, it can be done. On the issue of the economy, clearly my brother didn't get a Premier correctly. Premier was saying to stimulate the economy, you need to give money so that that money can circulate. You give one money, that person goes and buys. There's no point in manufacturing too many TVs and radios and whatever when people cannot buy. Now, if you have money in your pocket, you are able to buy, and that stimulates the economy.
Can you explain to us about the minimum wage that the EFF is punting?
Yes, we are saying as EFF, I mean, it's even a debate that Obama is trying to introduce the minimum wages as well. What we are saying is that no worker should earn less than 4,500 rand. You can't. If you look at, for example, the informal settlements opposite Sandton, Straightler, those people, they are working, but they are earning far less than 2,000 rand. And you can't maintain a family with 2,000 rand. That is why you see them in shacks. That is why you see them building their houses next to the factories, to the workshops, so that they can be able to cut the cost of transport, the cost of everything. So we are saying no worker should, whether you are a domestic worker or you are a cleaner, you cannot earn less than 4,000 rand.
Okay. Mr. Rajbansi, do you agree with the EFF's economic policies? Because that's the core of what they're about. If you look at their name, Economic Freedom Fighters, they've got these policies. Some would say it's radical. How do you view it?
Well, it's extremely radical. You know, there's no economic sense and no logic in any one of them, because it's not going to work in our country, not at this stage of, such a volatile economy that we have. We're just going to get disinvestment, and it's too radical, and it's basically asking for an emotional vote to get into parliament, and I don't think so that's the, a responsible way to go to parliament.
Okay.
I just have a follow-up question.
Yes. No. On the economic freedom fighters, economic policies, yes.
Yes. Let's start with minimum wage. If I'm earning 4,000 and I have a domestic worker, do I have to pay her 4,000? That's number one. Number two, 60% of the mines in this country are working on a debt and at a loss. They need to be sustained with investment continuously. Are you going to nationalize those also and incur that debt in government?
Okay, Mpile, your response?
Yeah. I'll go back to the example of Transnet. Transnet, before it became a state-owned company, it was doing very bad. But when the government took it over and made it a state-owned company, it did very well. I mean, we've got a number of years that we can say Transnet has been growing year on year. So it's not a question of it's not going to work if it's in government. Yes, they are. I mean, we've got government. Some of the departments are not working, but it does not mean all the departments are not doing well. And on the issue of my comrade next to me, the issue of, obviously we need to change the system, and once we change the system, definitely there's going to be changes paid, and we're accepting that. And we are saying we can't continue in the same situation. Yes, there will be probably going down of the rand and all that, but we are saying the ultimate goal is to bring back the dignity of a black person. And by doing that, we need to.
Julius Malema was a rebellious child that you couldn't discipline. Now he left the house and he's standing in opposition to you. And many would say it's your fault. Those who don't agree with the EFF, they said you should have learned to discipline him eternally. But be that as it may, why do you disagree with what she's saying? Many people feel that it's time for radical change. The ANC is talking with a forked tongue. Madiba made too many concessions. He secured some degree of political freedom, but very little of economic freedom, and that's what they're fighting for.
No, I think that's the heart of the debate about the future of this country. We have not had significant economic change in this country. White capital is still controlling this economy. We've had 20 years of freedom, and if we want to overcome the challenges of unemployment, poverty, etc., we will have to take more drastic steps to begin to transform this, to transform our economy, so that the vast majority of our people feel they have a stake in the economic system. On the issue of whether we nationalize or not, Nationalization of mines is a policy that has been experimented with for the last 50 years in many developing countries. By and large, they have failed. What the ANC is looking at is what other mechanisms can we use to begin to draw on the natural wealth that we have, the diamonds, the platinum, the gold, etc. That should belong to the people as a whole. The Freedom Charter says that the wealth of our people, of the country, should be shared by all. So we are looking at a new tax regime for the mining industry particularly, looking at some form of state investment and involvement in the mining and ownership of the mining sector. That is part of the policies that we are exploring and looking at very carefully. And I think over the next 5 years, we will begin to see some changes in that area.
Quick question
on
to
the
you,
issue of the ANC Youth League, because I think there was a question.
Yeah, let me couple a question to that. Julius Malema comes from the womb of the ANC. You know him better than most. He was from your house. Do you think he has the capacity to lead? And either way, motivate why?
No, it's not about whether an individual can lead or not. It's whether the EFF offers a solution to the country's problems. I think there are some important points that they are raising, but overall, the tactics that they are employing at the moment and the overall strategic approach is destructive, is negative. It will take our country backwards. It will lead to social conflict and division in our society.
Umpile, just before you respond, there are those who say that what track record has Malema got? Apart from being a loudmouth, making headlines, very good at rhetoric, what did he achieve when he was the president of the ANC Youth League, apart from making controversial statements? Can you answer that and then respond to Ismail?
Oh, Julius Malema is a good leader. You were asking him if Julius Malema can lead. Yes, Julius Malema can lead. The ANC Youth League was dead before Julius Malema. He revived the Youth League. He has been an activist. We've seen, he himself, the issue of going back to the issue of the SARS, of the 4 million, he was developing, he was helping his communities. He built churches, he was giving out wheelchairs and all that. So that is a typical leader who...
What policy legacy has he left behind in the ANC Youth League?
Sympathetic to the community. Come again.
What policy legacy has he left for the ANC Youth League? What policies did he develop when he was the president of the ANC Youth League? What structure did he develop, apart from the bold statements and the giving of parcels?
He was never giving out parcels. You are totally misleading people. Julius Malema never gave out parcels. It was the ANC that was giving out parcels, not Julius Malema.
Okay, respond to what Ismail says that with regards to your policies.
Yeah, he's saying the nationalization of mines has failed. And that is a question that can be debated the whole night. I mean, capitalism has also failed. We can argue that. It's not working for South Africa. We are living here, we are living an example. We are here, we are experiencing that. It's not working. And we are saying a typical example of a state-owned entity is working. That is Transnet. It's growing day by day. So we want to, for example, the mines, they've got a lifespan, just like any human being. So if a mine's lifespan is about 30 years, for example, I'm actually responding to my sister here who's saying we're going to upset the investors. The investors are not going to be upset anyway. Because once the 30 years lifespan of that mine comes to an end, they're going to go, whether we like it or not.
All right. Al-Jamaa, your thoughts on the Economic Freedom Front's economic policies in particular?
I didn't have the time to peruse through the entire manifesto because it's some 32 pages long. But if we're talking of the economic policy, nationalization is not the answer. If we look at 2012, if you look at the mining industry in 2012, it was probably the worst year the local mining industry experienced. Since the Rand Rebellion that took place in 1922, there wasn't another mining incident like that one that took place. But in 2013, South Africa dropped behind Peru to become only the world's 6th largest producer of gold. Whereas in the 70s, this is a far cry from the 70s, when South Africa mined almost 80% of the world's gold. Now we know a lot of economics and world playing fields, and that has an impact on that. Those are things that we need to look at. The other thing also that what we're lacking in and what is really, as far as the economy is concerned, and we are totally, very, very much against it, is BEE. BEE was not a government initiative. BEE was by those apartheid parastatals and companies like Sanlam, and there was a company called Sanco, and they were afraid when the ANC came into power that they were going to nationalize everything. That's exactly what EFF is speaking about. And what they did was they took the elite from the ANC and then they started giving them shares into the companies. And that's where BEE has faltered. Senko was an industrial division of Sanlam, and it invented the concept of BEE.
All right. DA, your response to EFF?
Thank you, Mulana. I just want to start off by saying it's been proven that their policies haven't worked, specifically on nationalization of mines. And I can give you some examples. In the Congo, where Mobutu took over in 1960, where output dropped from 500,000 tons to 40,000 tons, whether it was in Zambia, where within 6 years production had halved, or whether it is our own nationalized mine in South Africa, Elexco, which is a diamond mine, which had to be bailed out for 350 million rand because output nosedived and jobs were lost. But I want to contend with specific issues on this and our offer in particular. When Ismail speaks about white capital still controlling the economy, and I want to agree with my brother from Al-Jamaa, BE has not worked. We believe that BE, by and large, in the current form, in the forms that it has since manifested with employment equity, has only ensured that there are few black billionaires, that there's another political elite that is now in bed with the white capital elite that existed previously, and now they're enjoying the spoils together. And our policy was very clear. It's why we opposed the bill after debating it and looking at the measures, as to say that any type of empowerment initiative that's not going to help the masses is not going to work. When we talk about mines, for example, it's very similar to our share equity schemes in the Western Cape when we deal with farms. We want to ensure that the shareholding is distributed to ordinary workers and to communities where they lived. We want to make sure that state monopolies, and it was spoken about by the EFF, these state monopolies must be deconstructed and taken apart, and those shares must be given to ordinary South Africans. It's the only way that we can make sure that all South Africans can share in the wealth of this country without undermining our economy and undermining job creation.
Thank you, Mola. Now, what Julius is going to do, he's going to serve a very, very useful function in Parliament, because he's going to raise the issue of the 60% of youth that's unemployed. He's going to raise sharply the issue of the fact that we have the greatest inequality in the world. And he's going to keep the government honest and accountable. But as far as the reality of its policy goes, it won't take 2 years for the country to crash. It will take 30 days for the rand to be valued at 1 cent. That's what will happen. Take it from me. So I think, look, they will have a very, very useful purpose. They will raise rhetoric to a point that has never been raised in our parliament. And issues that have escaped will now come under very, very sharp focus, and the ANC is going to get the toughest ride it has ever had in its 20 years existence.
Okay. Yusuf, there was a question about Guguletu and RDP houses. Quick response to that.
Thank you, Milana. I did state earlier very clearly that when we look at our budgets, we have spent consistently 80% of our budget on poor communities. We know that there are challenges, and we believe, and we've shown that we are dealing with those challenges better than the ANC is doing, and we're doing the best we can within the resource constraints there are. Let's talk about housing delivery very quickly, because the question was directed specifically at housing. Within 3 years of governance in the city of Cape Town, we tripled housing delivery. We are able to make sure that when we cut corruption, because we can't just write corruption off as something that Zuma does, for example. It is prevalent in the ANC. There's 30 billion rand that is lost every single year through corruption. It's not just through Nkandla. Nkandla was over 200 million. And I know that Ismail tried to dodge that question very tactfully by not denouncing his president. But anyways, when we talk about corruption, corruption takes away jobs, it takes away houses, it takes away basic services. It's why we're able to increase our delivery rates, is because we cut corruption. And we believe that if we're able to do that, we can stretch our resources further. It's why we have the highest input but the lowest output in our education system, for example.
There was the last question from the last round, Ismail, about the defunct ANC Youth League. How are you going to serve the interests of the youth when you have a paralyzed youth league at the moment?
No, I think let's accept one thing. Malema, two qualities of leadership are the following. One is boldness. And I think Malema has got that boldness and courage. But with it must come discipline. A leader will fail if you don't have discipline, self-discipline, and those kinds of things. There'll be huge problems in that organization, in any organization. What is unfortunate is that here's a person who had a lot of talent. He had misdirected the energies of the ANC Youth League, and it had reached a point where he thought he was bigger than the organization. He could take on anybody. Now, no sensible organization, particularly one that lasted 102 years, will allow that.
But you now have a defunct youth league.
He has been disciplined, and he's been removed from the party, and he's made his own choice. So good luck to him. What we are doing is rebuilding the ANC Youth League. We've disestablished many of the structures that were built and developed under Malema. We've disestablished those, and we're in the process of rebuilding the youth organization. We need a powerful youth movement in this country.
All right.
That's
Jazakallah.
critical.
Jazakallah. We're going to go to the final round of questions.
Young people.
Right. We're going to go to the final round of questions. I know Eat also have to come up, Ismail, but we're not going to let you go on that one. Either one of them will bring it up. Oh, no, this brother first.
Firstly, I just wish to compliment the House for the democratic way in which they've conducted themselves. We are in a powerful democracy, and we have achieved tremendous rights in our country, right from our mosques, our churches, our private schools, our religious schools, etc. Our women are not molested with their hijabs and their niqabs.
Okay, your question.
No, the question is this. The DA controls the Mid-Vaal region. They have not allowed the erection of a mosque in the Mid-Vaal region. I want to know from the DA why. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. My name is Michael. I'm from the African National Congress. I'd like to go back to grassroots. And my question is posed to the DA. You know, you speak so highly about the good governance that you implement in the Western Cape. And when we look at areas in the north of Johannesburg, which is DA-run areas, everything looks fine. You know, the grass are cut, the roads, you know, your politicians are doing. The question is, Lenasia is also a DA area. It was won by the DA, Ward 9. Why do our area not get the same attention like your northern areas, where there is supreme? Why is it that most of the nations don't even know who their ward councillor is in the first place, and even called up any public meetings?
Okay, thank you. Next question.
My name is Iqbal Mahdi. I'm from the ANC Lenasia branch. My question is to the DA. Israel committed great atrocities against the Palestinian people. The DA talks about human rights, but never condemns Israel, and I'd like to know why. The Deputy President and the ANC has supported the call for the release of Palestinian political prisoners, but the DA remains silent, and I'd like to know why.
Thank you.
Good evening. Also to the DA.
I'm very popular tonight, man.
If I want to vote, and normally we know if people lead, they lead by example. And if people want to lead by example and they cannot condemn atrocities and apartheid in another country, how can I ever vote DA? If you are not condemning, or Helen Ziller, I actually want her to go on state television and condemn what's happening in Israel. They're killing the people, they took their land, and they're not condemning it.
Okay.
So how can I vote for you?
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I've got a question that there is, basically it will be a couple of speakers with this one question. There are 30 billion wasted costs by the Auditor
Closer
General.
to the mic.
30 billion wasted costs by all the departments by the Auditor General. We are 60 million people in South Africa, plus the foreigners. Where is this money going to? Because if you could invest 1 million just on each person in South Africa, this money would be resolved. Coming to Marikana, this is where the cost is. That will be COPE, ANC, and you, and EFP. Basically, they could answer these questions. Marikana killing, according to the internet, 52% was owned by Cyril Ramaphosa. In B, he took a loan, which amounted to quite a bit. When it comes to Acheng, the World Bank was involved also in Marikana.
All right.
London was also involved in Marikana. Acheng was one of the chairpersons of Anglo-American. She was also in the World Bank. Then it comes to things where our resources are getting out of this country. That's where the EFP is trying to take
I've got your question. Jazakallah.
Hello to the ANC. ANC is 20 years in power. What about the land issue in South Africa? Must we call Robert from Zimbabwe to tell us how to solve the problem?
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Loud and clear, in the mic.
My question to the EFF is,
your leader has never ever worked. How did he amass his wealth to pay the revenue 16 million? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Prince Adiki. I don't have to explain where I'm come from. You can see. I would love to pose a question to Mr. Etol. But maybe let me remind him of a statement that Madiba said in '94 when he was addressing the Congress of COSATU. I quote, "If the ANC does to you what the apartheid government did to you, then you must do to the ANC what you did to the apartheid government." Unquote.
Thank you.
Okay. I think ANC needs to stop misleading us and obviously to mislead our future. I mean, the destiny of our kids. I mean, you can't come here and talk about employment creation. I mean, 20 years down the line. You've promised this I heard you said 6 million job, you've said it before. And obviously, instead we lost a lot of millions of jobs. And you're still saying that. I mean, I think it's time that the ANC come back or go back to the South African citizen and say, you know what, some of our policies are not relevant in today's world. I mean, okay, as youth,
Your question is?
My question is, how do you still talk about employment creation instead of employment growth? And maybe talk about entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to pose a question to the EFF.
Clear, loud and clear in the mic.
I'd like to pose a question to the EFF. There was a statement made by Malema when he came to Lens to Tambilile.
No, in the mic, I can't hear you.
And he mentioned something to the fact that now the children should go to the Makula schools. What does it mean? That is a racist issue or not?
Okay. Okay, I'll repeat the question to you. Malema came on one occasion when there were riots here at Tembelishle, and he said that our children nowadays go to Makula schools. So he wants you to explain that phrase, Makula. Is it not derogatory? Yeah, he was in the ANC Youth League at the time, but he referred to Indians as Makula. They want you to respond to that.
But that was then. He was in the ANC. So Malema right now is EFF. Let's talk Malema EFF.
So everything has changed about him.
He is now EFF.
All right, the other issue about the EFF that was asked, the one brother asked that Malema never ever worked in his life. Where does he get all this wealth from?
Yeah, Malema is a businessman. I mean, we must be serious now. No, we must be serious. Malema was a businessman. He had companies. Malema was a businessman. There was any money.
Okay. Kenny is shaking his head. You were part of the EFF when they started. Why are you laughing, Kenny? Why are you laughing when she says Malema is a businessman?
If he was a businessman, then I was the president of South Africa.
Ms. Rajbatsi?
Yeah, he was a businessman. He was a entrepreneur.
He was a what? I didn't get you there.
A entrepreneur.
Your response?
Malema was a businessman, and the issue of 16 million.
All right, give her a chance. Give her a chance. Give her a chance.
I'm going to educate you on the 16 million.
Let us speak. Let us speak.
The Ratanan Trust did not pay SARS the 4 million. I think we must just be clear on that one. Now, SARS multiplied until it gets to the 16 million. The trust was owning 4 million and not 16 million.
Okay. Yusuf, I want to quickly touch on some of the issues there. I know you're going to have a lot to say on e-tools as well, and I want to get to that. The Midval Masjid issue, we hear about this everywhere. The DA says, well, it hasn't been proven that it was a policy of the DA to oppose the building of masjids. At times, it was not true that DA representatives were opposing, and at times it had to do with bylaws. Your answer.
No, I just want to talk on this in broad because I'm not sure of the specific issue, and I'd like to speak to the gentleman after this debate in order we can engage in that issue, and we've done that in the past. But let's look at mosques in particular. There is no way any councillor from the DA can ever, on any spurious grounds, reject the building of a masjid. And I find it quite frustrating. Can I please finish?
No, we didn't hear what you said.
Repeat what you said.
They can never be. If there's a DA councillor that can do something like that, there've been those that are fired for less than that. But I just want to speak very quickly before I'm interrupted. In the city of Johannesburg, Ward 109, Lilian Kekana, as an ANC councillor, objected to the building of the masjid. Abu Batia's masjid here in Lenasia, we are still waiting. Why is the demolition order still? I want Ismail to be able to tell us why is that demolition order still standing on the masjid. Okay. There's long grass. No, before I finish, since 2010, and we've never had anything back on that. But we've never ever opposed
on
the
that specific issue. Quick response.
Very simply, that's in the Baklu area. The ANC has gone out and supported the construction of a masjid there. In fact, every former white area where applications have been lodged for a building of a mosque or any religious site which is not a Christian church, the DA councillors have opposed.
That's untrue. And he still hasn't dealt with Abu Batia's mosque in the demolition order.
We can talk of Wombat.
Why are we running away from this?
It's by the masjid here in Lance, which is known as Abu Batia's masjid. He says the ANC is opposing that masjid and has resulted in the demolition order.
The ANC has supported the application, it has gone through.
But the ANC produced the demolition order. I mean, how do you respond to that and say we support it?
Sorry?
He says the ANC produced the demolition order for that mosque on Nirvana Drive.
The one in Lens?
Abu Batia's
Of course, yes. The council took a decision to demolish. That land has been illegally occupied and we make no apologies for that.
Now, Mulana, it's exactly the point that I'm making. Wherever there's an issue on masjid, the ANC has always claimed bylaws.
All right.
But where it's something else, they try to become politically opportunistic.
I get your point. The other issue was they want from Helen Zille, that was a specific request, Helen Zille to condemn Israel as an apartheid state. Do you think she's willing to do that?
Okay, Mulana, the question wasn't about the apartheid state, the question was on human rights abuses. So let me just correct that very quickly. And Helen Zille has always, and she will always, condemn human rights abuses, even by the Israeli government on Palestinians. We've done it in the past, and let me state categorically. No, Mulana, let me state categorically. The DA condemns the human rights abuses in Israel. We condemn illegal settlement buildings and so forth.
Respond? Let's give them a chance to respond there.
I'd like to respond to my brother here from the DA. DA councillors are complicit in many wards where applications have been made for zoning of masajids, for parking, for madrasas being built. And this actually boils down to that, you know, the DA has slapped the Muslim community in the face. Firstly, we had Diane Cole Barnard who made accusations of terrorist scams.
She never did that, Lana, but you'll continue.
Okay. Then we had Lindiwe Mazibuku who made comments on Palestine.
Also untrue.
But let me go back and just assure, I am busy at this very moment with an issue of a masjid in Sandton, where the DA councillor is not willing to help the community. In 2011, the DA councillor assisted a resident to go and complain and put a complaint with the public protector for the adhan that was given in a mosque in Ravali. And Al-Jamaa intervened in this. We have intervened also in a case with a masjid in Ridgeway.
Okay, let me give the response.
Nana, please,
We're running out of time.
Nana, you are always cutting my time specific on this issue.
Specifically about Rivoli.
No, there's never been a DA councillor that has opposed that. There have been, and let me make this very clear. In fact, there was a website that was put up about Save the Adhan or whatnot. In fact, when I went through that, it spoke about ACDP, it spoke about an ANC councillor, Lilian Kekana, it spoke about ratepayer associations. Where do we come with the point that it's DA councillors? There's never been a single DA councillor that has done that. And let me just talk very quickly about Baklu before I go to Ward 109 in Lilian Kekana's ward. It was the ANC sub-branch working with Brace, the Ratepayers Association, that instigated the objection. And it's not a ward councillor that can prevent a masjid from being built. You have never seen this in a DA-controlled municipality.
Something there?
Yeah, I want to tell you something. You know, one of the reasons why we came to Gauteng is because of all these complaints. And we have done excellently in KwaZulu-Natal. One thing the ANC has done that is not good for the Bill of Rights is that they put a moratorium on religious sites. That is creating a problem. The other thing that the DA is doing, and I believe the DA has a hidden policy on this. In Durban, we had Queensborough Mosque objections, and it was by a DA white councillor.
No, it wasn't.
In Maritzburg, in the city centre, the DA objected to the mosque being built near the Maritzburg Camp. But because the MF is present and strong in all those municipalities, etc., we have pushed it through and
All right,
we have
thank
fought
you.
for it.
We can go on all night about the masjid issue and the Palestinian
No,
issue,
no,
but
let
it's
me
getting late.
respond to the question itself.
Yeah, you can mention it in your closing remarks.
No,
Ismail
there
Bhai,
won't
quick
be time.
response about the education aspect. Why has the ANC dropped the pass rate from 50% to 30%?
The pass rate is not satisfactory. It is clearly part of a policy review. We must raise the bar.
Right. I want to. Okay, quickly.
Can I just want to respond also to the brother who spoke on. He mentioned something about value-added products for the youth, and obviously this definitely goes back to the education. Our entire education system needs revamping in this country. We cannot fully establish in this country, if we want to fully establish societies, if we cannot produce educated citizens. And those citizens, if we cannot produce educated citizens, we will not be able to produce leaders for that society. Now, most problems in a society, if you look at it, are traceable somehow or the other to an education system. And when you have an education system that is totally devoid of moral training, this becomes the soil of education. I just want to highlight what's happening in our education system is they are instilling capitalism first, instead of putting through the purpose of education for economic prosperity. That's what's happening.
Okay. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you, you've taken notes of some of the other aspects and you can respond to that in your closing remarks because it's getting quite late. I want to discuss the e-tolls issue and then we'll move to concluding
there were
remarks.
other questions also.
Sorry?
There were other questions.
Yeah,
that
you can respond to that in your concluding remarks. Let's start this side of the table. Farooq Bhai, do you have an e-tag?
Sorry, yes.
Do you have an e-tag? Yes.
About?
Do you have an e-tag? Will you pay e-tolls?
Sorry?
E-tolls.
E-tolls, no, I think, it's a double hazard because you're already paying the petrol levy. So why on top of petrol levy should you pay e-tolls? It's, not fair. And these roads are already established roads. The idea when tolling was first mooted was that if a road is in existence, then that road should not attract e-tolls. If you're building a brand new road, then that's fine. So I'm very, very opposed to it. And I'm also opposed on the modeling of the e-toll, which takes money out of this country. Now, on some of the other issues, can I...
In the concluding remarks.
Yes.
Yusuf?
Thank you, Malana. This one is very simple, and I'd like to see Ismail's response as well, since he's the MEC of Transport. The point is quite clear. The entire e-tolls is another arms deal. There are many of those that benefited from the collection system, from the deals that were made with foreign companies to make sure that money is siphoned off from that money that is paid to go for collection purposes, not even to build the roads. When it comes to the amount that has consistently been raised on the petrol levy, we have not had any account as to how is that being used in order for urban tolling. We are opposed to urban tolling, and now we see that the ANC is not even content with tolling only in Gauteng. It wants to try and force it down the throats of the Western Cape government and other places around the country, and we will resist it and take it to the Constitutional Court if necessary.
Okay. Abdul Razak Nurbhai, your party's views on e-tolling? Take the mic there.
I think I've made mention of the e-toll already earlier when I said that there's a 20 billion rand bill that must be paid. Taxis that have been exempted from e-tolls, and residents, the average worker, the average road driver, the amount of e-toll fares has already twice been reduced. We had organizations like OTA that came out, even Kusatu marched against e-tolls, and Al Jamaa was part of that march with e-tolls. So we are not for e-tolls at all.
Okay. Ismail Bhai, you're alone here on the e-tolls issue.
No, that's fine. I think the key issue is how do we fund public infrastructure? If the state hasn't got the entire financial resources, how do we get the private sector to form a partnership with government to give the money up front so that you can invest in the infrastructure, create the infrastructure, and then pay off over time? If there was any doubt to the financial modeling of e-tolls, and if there's a shred of evidence that shows to corruption, I can tell you Sunwell would not have raised 59 billion rands in the sale of its bonds. A few days ago, they went back on the market, they raised 500 million rands to the sale of bonds. No investor will be stupid to put something that is going to be a failure. This is a successful model. It's been piloted throughout the world: Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Spain, Portugal, Canada. There's e-tolls. If you want to get development in this area, we're going to have to forge a partnership with the private sector. We're going to have to get the private sector to invest in infrastructure. And of course, those who benefit, those who use that facility must pay. That's the essence of e-tolls. It's a user pay principle.
Kenny, have you bought an e-tag?
No.
You can afford it though. Now go ahead.
Yeah, it's a matter of principle. I think the argument that government cannot fund infrastructure is wrong. 6 companies stole 50 billion rands from the taxpayers whilst building stadiums. They were fined only 1 billion and they were rewarded with 49 billion. So if government doesn't have money to pay for e-tolls, they have given 6 private companies, white capital owned, 49 billion. They can go and recoup that 49 billion to pay for the e-tolls.
Okay. EFF, you people are saying you'll physically remove it if you get the governance of the province.
Yeah, we are very, our position is very clear. Not only through legislation, but we are going to get grillers and then.
And what will you do with it afterwards?
Those things. Come again.
Where are you going to put it when you take it out?
No, we'll remove them completely and destroy them. You will never see them again. Never. We are going to make sure that there's no remembrance of it all.
And if you don't win the province, and Ismail comes back as MEC for transport, and he continues to sing off the same song sheet, what are you going to do then about e-tolls?
No, we're going to win the province. Definitely we're going to win. No doubt. No coalition with DA.
You and who?
No coalition with DA. We are going to win the province.
All right, Ms. Lajwatsi.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to approach e-toll. One is that if there's no consultation in a province and citizen participation is absolutely important, then people shouldn't pay. That's one thing. The other thing is that we have to be realistic then, what Mr. Vadi is saying, that look, you're a landlocked province and you need infrastructure because you need investment, and this is really like, a capital province in the whole, or an economic province. But the issue here is that if you're going to look at it like that, then the argument should have been really forceful from him as an MEC to the national government, that then the money or that tolling should be shared by the entire country in some other form.
Okay.
But not bared by the people of Gauteng.
All right. I'll tell you what we're going to do now. It's already 10:30. I was hoping we'd finish around 10. I know there's a number of other issues that we need to talk about, and there's a lot more that we needed to get into, but unfortunately there are time constraints and these things do take long and people are getting tired. They have to work tomorrow. So we're going to allow each representative, starting this time this way around, 1.5 minutes. My colleague Mufti Musaji will keep time to wrap up, to tell us why to vote for your party, why not to vote for the other party, and whatever issues you feel still needs to be addressed. In that 1.5 minutes, I know you can't do too much justice, but that's all we can allow for the time being. We'll start with COPE's Farouk Kasim.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you should vote for COPE because you see, money is the thing that matters most. And you need people who really have an understanding of how money in government works. This is called national funding or the fiscus. You can follow me on Twitter at Faruqi because I will be raising these issues consistently day by day, highlighting for you the issues that our country will need to take care of. We can run away from everything, but we cannot run away from the money issue. And the reason why you should vote for COPE is to guarantee that there will be people in Parliament who will look after the taxpayers' money. Because if we do not, besides the failure, consider the risks of rising taxes, that is what you are going to be faced with. And who in South Africa wants to face rising taxes? Now, COPE is committed. If you look at our pamphlets, which is outside, we are asking, where is the money? How has 100 billion rands gone in 5 years? That's a massive amount of money. It would have paid for all the e-tolling and, something on top of it. 100 billion lost in 5 years. And remember that 82% of all the leases entered into by public works, 82%, went outside of the competitive
Yusuf
process.
Qasim, your concluding remarks.
Jazakallah khair, Mulana. I want to just start off by saying this election is going to be, apart from all of these other issues, it's most importantly about jobs, it's about the economy and how do we take South Africa forward. The DA is the only party that has policies that has been proven that can grow the economy by 8% and that can create 6 million real jobs, not the EPWP opportunities or temporary work opportunities that the ANC promises. We'll create those too as a stepping stone, but we'll create 6 million real jobs. We've also proven where we govern that we govern better. And there's been a lot of red herrings that have been brought by other parties because they know they can't contest us on a delivery record. They'll talk about us opposing masjids when we will never do that. I can guarantee as a national leader in the party that there will never be a DA councillor that can ever get away with something like that because we have always been for religious freedoms and we fought for that to be in the constitution. We govern, where we govern things work. We're able to also, where we don't govern, be an effective opposition. And we need to make sure that we have those people in parliament that can serve as an effective opposition in policy making to make sure that we have policies that can benefit our country, benefit our children and benefit future generations. And I want to end off by saying this. When we look at governance, we need to take it very seriously. We need to look at who controls which areas. There was a gentleman that said that the DA controls certain areas in the north. We don't. If we have a ward council, it doesn't mean we control the municipality and we can do anything about it. We must then hold the municipality and the council responsible because there's only so much a ward councillor can do. When the ANC has gone on record as saying that it is going to withdraw support from DA-controlled area wards and not even ensure. Thank you.
Abdul Razak Nurbai, your concluding remarks.
I think the listeners and the constituencies out there must first ask themselves whether they want a strong opposition with loose moral values, devoid of all divinity, or do they want a party that can rule with a consciousness of a creator? It is only when you have a party that rules with a consciousness of a creator that will stand accountable, that is transparent, and that is clear in all the propositions what they're going to put forth. Voters must become guardians of their vote, of their interests and their values. Otherwise, you're going to get and you're going to find power-hungry and money-hungry politicians will overshadow your vote. And voters need to be heard and not hurt. Al-Jama'ah is not asking to merely win your vote, but we are saying together, let's do what's best for your vote.
Right. Ismail Bhai, we know that Lens went to the DA in the last election. Why should they vote ANC?
Look, I think after all is said and done, what is quite clear is that the ANC is at the heart, is the center of politics, all aspects of life in this country. It has got, as I said, a rich and proud tradition. There could never have been a Mandela without the ANC. It is the ANC that gave rise to a leader of international stature. 2, it's about taking our country forward. No party on its own can take this country forward. It's the party working with the masses of our people, and that's why our slogan is very simple. Together, working together with our people to take the country forward as a whole. Our challenges are really unemployment and to stimulate economic growth. I think we've got a manifesto on our table which talks to that. We have to combat corruption. We have to fight crime. We have to get greater efficiency in government. There's no doubt about it. Some of the wastage, some of the maladministration, the abuse that has taken place is wrong. As a society, as a people, as government, as the ANC, as civil society, we must combat that and fight that. We need greater efficiency in our systems. We have got 20 years of experience. Remember, we came to power with no experience. We were a liberation movement, we are a fighting force. In 20 years, we have mastered the art of governing, but we must improve on that. Our people out there are huge challenges. In spite of the many successes that the ANC has scored, there are huge challenges out there. As a collective, as a nation, we must form a compact between business, labor, and the ANC to move the country forward.
Kenny Kunene.
There is only one way to improve the economic situation and the social development of people, and it's through a political will. And the two governments have shown that they do not have that political will. Entrepreneurial development is very key. Employment is very key. Education is very key. Healthcare is very important. Public healthcare is in tatters because there's no political will to take care of our people. And we are saying vote for Patriotic Alliance because because it is the only organization with no political baggage. There's two types of politicians in this country, those who are from prison and those who are going to prison. The leadership of Patriotic Alliance has been there. They have experienced hell, and we have shown over the years that our commitment is with ordinary people, and we want to change the lives of ordinary people. Therefore, vote Patriotic Alliance for our future, for our children.
EFF.
As EFF, we are saying the only party that speaks about the land of our forefathers is EFF. Therefore, you must vote for EFF. We are also saying, in terms of education, we are going to make it free and quality education from grade R up to the first degree. I was listening to my brother here breaking about NFSAS. NFSAS is a loan to the students. It's not free. So we are saying we are going to give for free. We are also going to implement the national health insurance to the people of South Africa. We are saying do it for the future, unlike those that are saying do it for Madiba, who is resting. He has done his work, he's resting peacefully. So we are saying we've respected him for 20 years, do it for the future of our children. This is the time, now is the time for economic freedom. Vote for economic freedom fighters on the 7th of May.
Mr. Rajvansi.
I wanted to just correct it, 7th of May. But look, I know that the shoes for Mr. Rajvansi are very big to fill, and I'm not denying that. But I want to tell you that as his widow, as well as his colleague for the last 15 years, I have been well trained to take over this job. The other thing is that from the Quran, I've been very inspired by the Prophet himself and how he has empowered widows. And that's going to keep me going. But we've come to Gauteng, of course, for the first time to fight both ballots for one reason, and that is that we have community activists here as our candidates who are going to go out and make sure that they get a foot in the door in the Gauteng legislature for one reason, and that is that we get fair funding and we get fair facilities for our people, because we need to uplift them and we need to empower them and we need to inform them what's going on in the country. But also to carry on the legacy of Mr. Rajvansi, because he has done a lot for Gauteng in the Tri-Cam, and he has done a lot for housing, he's done a lot for education and for culture, for all the facilities that you have, and for economic development in terms of the Oriental Plaza, etc. But for the people that are going to vote, be very well aware who your leaders are. You know, the DA is number one in fronting, and it is number one in applying affirmative action when it comes to the listing in our different parliaments. So they are vote trappers. They take your vote, but they put their own people there. So we are going to go to Parliament with an honest vote for our people. On May 7th, vote for the minority front on both ballot papers.
That brings us to the end of this War of the Words election debate organized by Radio Islam International and Jamiatul Ulama South Africa. I'd like to firstly thank all the representatives of the 7 parties present here tonight, the audience as well as the listeners of Radio Islam International, the viewers of ITV and listeners of Voice of the Cape. We hoped we would have had more time, but perhaps next time. Until then, good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
بالتقى والدين يهدينا ادعوك يا أمتي فاستنهضي همما فالمسجد الأقصى ما زال